Hello friends. Welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Kuandyk Bishimbayev. Kuandyk Bishimbayev was born on April 11, 1980, in Gil, Kazakh SSR. Kuandyk Bishimbayev grew up with his younger sister Arujan, born in 1984. He received 3 higher educations, studying at Kazak Academy of Management, Taz University, and George Washington University through a presidential scholarship. At 26, he defended his PhD thesis in economic sciences. Kuandyk began his career as a bank manager in 2000. He briefly interned at the Ministry of Economy, then held senior positions in large companies before returning to the ministry in 2016. He became the young head of the ministry but was dismissed 8 months later due to a bribery scandal, sentenced to 10 years in prison. However, he was released on parole after just 1 year. In his personal life, Kuandyk was married twice. His first wife, whom he married in 1999 and had a son in 2000. They divorced in 2004. In 2006, he married, with whom he had 3 children before divorcing in 2020. After a few years, he married Sultanat Nuknova. Sultanat Nuknova was born on May 15, 1992, in Pavlodar, Kazakhstan. She was the youngest of 2 children to businessman father and economist mother. Her uncle was a prominent politician. As a schoolgirl, Sultanat became interested in astrology, studying literature and making accurate predictions for friends and classmates. She turned her hobby into a career, achieving success quickly. Sultanat promoted her astrological services on social media, offering consultations, forecasts, and guidance on goal achievement, career choice, and spiritual growth. She also gave advice on love affairs and relationships, with a client base consisting only of women and girls. She quickly achieved financial independence by doing what she loved. Her services were in high demand, with consultations scheduled months in advance. She had gained a large following on social media and was living her dream life. In spring 2022, Kuandyk stumbled upon Sultanat's page on a popular social network. He liked Sultanat and decided to contact her for an astrological consultation, but she turned him down, saying she only served women. This rejection only fueled his interest, and the politician persistently tried to get her attention, showering her with compliments, convinced that only she could help him as a trusted specialist. Sultanat was flattered but refused to meet Kuandyk, who repeatedly asked her out despite Sultanat offering online consultations. He persisted for months, gathering information about her life, habits, and interests, but she remained uninterested. Sultanat initially refused to meet the man, but eventually agreed to a meeting for face-to-face counseling. Despite his good impression, polite behavior, and courtesy, she told her brother that he was not her type and they wouldn't match. Initially, Sultanat was not worried about Kuandyk because she knew she could keep him. However, within a month, the situation changed when Kuandyk gained influence by befriending a respected older member of the family, Sultanat's grandmother. Kuandyk asked to speak to Sultanat's grandmother, asking for her support in case Sultanat changed her mind about marrying him. This gesture touched Sultanat, but she still refused to pursue a relationship with him. Sultanat visited her parents in Pavlodar in fall 2022 and mentioned no serious changes in her personal life were expected. She confided in her brother that the 12-year age difference with Kuandyk confused her and she wasn't attracted to him, also citing astrological incompatibility. Sultanat's brother was shocked to see a post on his social media that his sister had accepted Kuandyk's marriage proposal, just a month after their visit. This news surprised both her family and friends, as she had recently said that nothing serious would happen. A few months later, in December 2022, they held a luxury wedding at a budget establishment in Astana. The marriage was not officially registered, with they opting for a mosque ceremony instead. Sultanat's attitude towards her partner changed significantly after the wedding. She praised his intelligence, education, and conversation skills to friends, and denied his involvement in a corruption case that led to his brief imprisonment, claiming he was framed. From the outside, they seemed happy. He showered her with gifts, and she called him the perfect husband. Friends envied their relationship, thinking she was lucky. However, this didn't last. After the wedding, they moved into his parents' house, where his mother, Almira, spoiled her with gifts and protected her from household chores, but couldn't shield her from her son's true nature. Sultanat would periodically visit her parents with her husband, but she wouldn't invite them to her home because it would annoy Kuandyk and cause arguments. At first, none of her relatives were aware of this. However, less than a month after the wedding, on New Year's Eve, Sultanat's brother visited and witnessed a disturbing scene. A large, festive table had been set, but the celebration was only for the immediate family. When Kuandyk's cousin and his wife arrived with gifts for everyone, Sultanat was embarrassed because she didn't have a gift in return. She quickly found a solution by giving Kuandyk's cousin's wife a bottle of expensive perfume that her husband had bought her the day before, but she hadn't had a chance to open it yet. Kuandyk was not just displeased, but enraged by her actions. He yelled at her, claiming she had no right to give away something he had paid for, and began insulting her. The guests quickly left, and when her parents tried to intervene, they were rudely shut down. In a fit of rage, Kuandyk overturned the table, spilling food and drinks everywhere, and ruining the New Year's Eve celebration. Sultanat's brother was shocked by the scene and didn't know how to react. The next day, Sultanat confided in him over the phone that her husband's behavior had changed dramatically since their wedding, and she was unsure of the reason, but hoped the situation would improve with time. Sultanat Nukanova's brother advised her to end the relationship and return home, but she flatly refused. 2 months later, she sent him selfies showing severe bruises on her face, asking him not to ask any questions. Concerned, her brother tried to contact her, but she didn't answer his calls. He then reached out to her husband, Kuandyk, who agreed to meet with him. During their meeting, Kuandyk told Sultanat's brother to stay out of their business and refused to explain the cause of the bruises on his wife's face. Kuandyk was also unable to account for Sultanat's whereabouts, which filled him with uneasy thoughts. Fortunately, Sultanat was eventually found at her parents' country home. Despite the pleas of loved ones, Sultanat returned to her husband, insisting that she loved him and was willing to do anything to save their marriage. For a while, he behaved impeccably, showering her with gifts and promising to change for her sake. They even took a vacation together to a popular resort in the Maldives, where they appeared to be very happy. Sultanat didn't explicitly complain about her marriage, but her behavior and appearance changed. She lost weight, became withdrawn, and wore revealing clothing, possibly to hide bruises. She stopped working as an astrologer and blogger, and only posted happy photos with her husband on social media. Kuandyk took away her source of income, making her reliant on him. She was not allowed to socialize without his permission and was monitored at all times. Despite appearing perfect to outsiders, their relationship was actually controlling and suffocating. Sultanat confessed to her friend that her husband exerted total control over her, forbidding her to work or contact her parents without his knowledge, and was irrationally jealous, accusatory, and abusive. Despite her friend's horror and advice to leave him, she insisted she just wanted to talk, not be advised. They sought help from a family psychologist to save their marriage. Sultanat's husband rejected her therapist options and instead chose his own specialist, who blamed Sultanat for all their problems. She suspected her husband had hired the therapist to humiliate her. In summer 2023, Sultanat tried to leave him and stay with her parents, but her husband appeared a week later, asking for another chance and suggesting a change of environment to save their marriage. Sultanat hoped having a child would change her husband's attitude, but she couldn't get pregnant. After a family dinner in October, she briefly left her husband and moved into a rented apartment found by her brother. However, she returned to her husband 10 days later and even remarried him in a mosque ceremony, which she personally told her family about. On November 5th, she invited her family and close friends to her cousin's restaurant. Kuandyk made a good impression with his chivalrous behavior, being attentive and affectionate towards her. Everyone believed his feelings were genuine, but tragedy was looming. On November 9th, a relative contacted Sultanat's brother over the phone, sounding frightened as she asked about the truth of a social media rumor. After clarification, she shared a news link which reported that a former economy minister had taken the life of his young wife. Sultanat had asked to stay with him for a night after threatening to leave her husband. He agreed and told her where to find the spare keys, but she never arrived and her phone stopped working. He rushed to her house, but found no one there, and her husband was not answering his phone, which made things even more concerning. The decision was made to immediately go to the family restaurant, where Sultanat was last in contact, to search for answers. While on the way, he received a call from his frightened parents, who had also read the news and were trying to find out what had really happened. However, he couldn't provide them with any information and only promised to look into it. When he arrived at the restaurant, he was met by police officers who expressed their condolences and informed him that his sister had sadly passed away before receiving medical attention. Overwhelmed and disbelieving, he struggled to accept the news, but tragically, it was confirmed to be true. By the time he arrived, the main suspect, Kuandyk, had already been arrested and taken to the station. Kuandyk denied any guilt, claiming that the event was a terrible accident and that he was trying to help his wife. Also, the restaurant owner was taken into custody on suspicion of being involved in the incident. Several months ago, on the evening of November 8, 2023, Sultanat and Kuandyk and their friends attended a concert by singer Dima Bilan. The loud music made it difficult for their friends to follow the conversation between the spouses, who got into a heated argument. Initially, their friends thought they were just discussing something, but it soon became clear that they was engaged in a full-blown fight. They stormed out of the concert hall without saying a word to anyone and went to the restaurant bar, where they continued to quarrel in a private VIP booth. Camera footage shows Kuandyk taking several bottles of alcohol from the bar and joining his wife in the booth. As they drank wine and discussed their relationship, she told him that she couldn't continue like this and planned to leave him. Infuriated by her statement, Kuandyk started shouting and threatening her, even slapping Sultanat. After the altercation, she called her brother and told him she would be coming to his house for the night, having finally made up her mind to leave her husband. Around midnight, she stepped outside, intending to go to her brother's house, but her husband caught up with her and the argument continued. The surveillance footage reveals a 15-minute argument between them, after which Kuandyk convinced his spouse to re-enter the building. They continued to quarrel in the vestibule and eventually secluded themselves in a stall with no camera coverage, making it impossible to determine exactly what occurred inside. In the hallway, cameras recorded Kuandyk aggressively pursuing his wife, Sultanat, as she attempted to create distance. He grabbed her hands, shook her, and pushed her against the wall. Kuandyk's lawyer downplayed these actions, describing them as stroking. However, Sultanat tried to escape and locked herself in the toilet to evade her husband's aggression. Undeterred, he kicked the door, resulting in corresponding injuries. After forcing his wife to open the door, Kuandyk physically assaulted her, striking her multiple times in the face. He berated her, claiming that she lived at his expense. The events that followed are unclear, but Kuandyk alleged that his wife had an angry outburst and, in a fit of rage, removed all her clothes and jewelry, flushing them down the toilet to demonstrate her independence from him. According to another account, Kuandyk allegedly forced his wife to undress, intending to humiliate her further after the gold jewelry was lost down the drain. This led to Kuandyk becoming enraged, punching his wife in the face multiple times, and then pushing her with such force that she fell and hit the toilet. However, during the trial, Kuandyk claimed that his wife was intoxicated and had fallen several times while undressing, hitting her head on the tiles and plumbing fixtures. Kuandyk and his wife had planned to go home after leaving the restaurant, but he refused to drive due to his intoxication. He was ashamed of his drunken wife, who was wearing only underwear under her coat and didn't want to call a cab. They decided to return to their VIP booth instead. However, when Sultanat stopped to look at her reflection in the mirror, her husband forcefully pushed her towards the exit. This quickly escalated into a brutal assault, as he mercilessly beat her with his hands and feet and dragged her by the hair. At around 7 o'clock in the morning, he dragged her back to the VIP cabin, where he continued his attack. Kuandyk ultimately caused severe harm to Sultanat, but during the trial, he claimed he had no involvement in her injuries. According to him, she had fallen and hit the floor and furniture on her own, and then fell asleep on the sofa. He alleged that he noticed a bruise on her face, but rather than seeking medical attention, he consulted a fortune teller to determine if everything was all right with his wife. The fortune teller told Kuandyk his wife was drunk and needed sleep, so he calmed down and didn't touch her. Later, he realized she wasn't breathing and called his brother, Bishimbayev, also the restaurant owner. Together, they deleted CCTV footage, claiming it showed his wife's indecent behavior. Bayev called an ambulance in the evening, but she had already died. He claimed to have tried CPR, but it was too late. Both brothers were arrested by law enforcers. Kuandyk's former wife, Nazim, was also under scrutiny several years ago when her then-husband was arrested on corruption charges. She defended him at the time, but soon after his release, she filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences and claiming she had outgrown the marriage. However, after her ex-husband was accused of brutally murdering his new girlfriend, Nazim gave a candid interview, admitting that she believes him to be capable of such a crime. She explained that her 14-year marriage to Kuandyk changed dramatically in 2011 after the birth of their second child. Kuandyk became increasingly aggressive, selfish, and narcissistic, thinking that the world should revolve around him. Nazim also revealed that her husband frequently cheated on her, openly flaunting his infidelities. However, it wasn't until his phone data was accessed during his 2017 arrest that she discovered the full extent of his cheating. He had multiple mistresses, and they constantly changed. After Kuandyk was released from prison, his behavior became even more violent and aggressive, according to Nazim. A disagreement erupted between them a month later, sparked by a minor issue. However, Kuandyk's reaction was excessive, as he became enraged and ripped a toilet lid from the wall with his bare hands, throwing it at Nazim. Although she dodged, the incident made her realize that the marriage was unsalvageable in her opinion. Kuandyk had apparently restrained his true nature for a long time because he knew Nazim wouldn't tolerate his darker impulses. Kuandyk had a sinister strategy. He initially chose a victim, tested her limits, and pushed her to see how much she would tolerate. Once he was convinced that she wouldn't leave or complain, he revealed his true self as a sophisticated sadist. The trial of Kuandyk began in March 2024, with relatives of Sultanat pushing for an open trial to prevent him from using his wealth and connections to influence witnesses and judges. Kuandyk, who had previously been convicted of a serious offense but released on parole, requested a jury trial to avoid a life sentence. A jury of 12 was selected, and in this case, a life sentence would require a unanimous decision from all jurors and the judge, a very unlikely outcome. Kuandyk denies premeditated murder, claiming the event was an accident. He says his spouse provoked him, but video recordings contradict him. Initially, authorities considered charging him with domestic violence, a crime with lenient punishment in Kazakhstan. However, this sparked outrage, particularly from the victim's mother, who feels her son-in-law may get off too lightly, undermining her faith in justice. A law was approved in April 2024 to toughen penalties for domestic violence in Kazakhstan following public outrage. Kuandyk tried to pressure his brother into giving false testimony and also attempted to discredit his late wife in court, calling her an inadequate, unbalanced, and alcoholic who provoked him. He claimed he acted in a state of passion, hitting her only a few times, and that her other injuries were self-inflicted from falling under the influence of alcohol. However, Kuandyk was alleged that he didn't allow called medics for Sultanat and was instead concerned with deleting footage from cameras. Kuandyk ordered his brother to fake his wife's phone activity, making it seem like she was home. However, the plan didn't work. Kuandyk was found guilty of murder and sentenced to 24 years. Kuandyk's brother Bishimbayev was given a 4-year sentence for complicity. Sultanat's family expressed dissatisfaction with the court's decision. Her father hoped for a life sentence for his former son-in-law, calling any other verdict unfair. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Nicole Peets. Nicole Peets was born on February 26, 1973, in King County, Washington. Her parents, who later divorced while Nicole was still in school, had her as their only child together. During her high school years, Nicole was a lively and sociable individual who participated in sports and had a charming personality. She had many friends and enjoyed trips to the countryside, with Lake Sammamish, located east of Seattle, being her favorite vacation spot. She spent her summer vacations there every year. After high school, Nicole attended Western Washington College, where she studied public relations. Alongside her studies, she continued to engage in sports and maintained an excellent physical shape. She decided to turn her passion for sports into a career and landed a job as a trainer at a local sports club. There, she quickly earned the respect of her colleagues and gained a loyal client base who regularly attended her group classes. At the same time, Nicole pursued higher education in management and eventually secured a job at a major mobile communications company. Outwardly, Nicole appeared to be a friendly and sociable person who was always willing to help others. However, few people realized that she was hiding a great deal of pain and misery behind this facade. As a teenager, Nicole struggled with addiction after her parents got divorced. This event was traumatic for her fragile and still developing psyche, leading her to rebel and seek solace in bad company and alcohol. Unfortunately, this led to a severe addiction that lasted for several years and had a devastating impact on Nicole's physical and mental health. Her mother, Gail, was often away from home due to her demanding job as a flight attendant and didn't notice the warning signs. Nicole lived with her elderly grandmother, who also didn't initially realize that her granddaughter was regularly consuming alcohol. By the time the truth came to light, the damage had already been done. Fortunately, Nicole's mother was there to support her. Gail not only arranged for Nicole to receive therapy but also attended AA meetings with her, helping her to open up and overcome her addiction. By that time, Gail had remarried, and her new partner, Rod, was very supportive of Nicole. He treated her like his own daughter and believed she could overcome her addiction. Nicole took therapy seriously, attending every session, and soon overcame her addiction. However, the effects of alcohol on her health were significant. Nicole developed severe pancreas problems, requiring surgery. More devastatingly, her early alcohol abuse damaged her reproductive system, rendering her unable to have children. After overcoming her addiction in the mid-1990s, Nicole met her future husband, David, at her new job at a sports club. David, a regular at the club, was a tall, handsome young man who was diligent about his fitness routine. He was immediately drawn to Nicole, and she, too, noticed the attractive young man and became interested. Although David was 4 years younger than Nicole, the age difference did not bother them. The relationship between Nicole and David gradually developed into a romantic one, which lasted almost 8 years before they got married in 2002. Their intimate wedding ceremony in Hawaii was attended only by their closest friends and family. After exchanging their vows, they moved to a quiet town called Linwood in Washington State, where they bought a home and began their new life together. Nicole was known for being sociable, friendly, and had a talent for building relationships. She quickly formed close bonds with the neighbors and had a passion for animals, with multiple dogs being part of the family. Because unable to have children of her own, she directed her maternal instincts towards her pets. David and Nicole were viewed as the epitome of a happy married couple, with a seemingly perfect relationship that brought them joy. One of Nicole's many hobbies was cooking, and she excelled at it. She delighted her husband and impressed guests with her culinary skills, taking pleasure in sharing meals and company with those she loved. Tragedy struck when Nicole disappeared on the eve of her 33rd birthday in 2006. Nicole failed to report to work and was unreachable by her family throughout the day. Her mother, Gail, tried to contact her but was unsuccessful, prompting her to alert David, Nicole's husband, to see if he knew what was going on. However, David had also been unable to reach Nicole. When questioned, David revealed that he and Nicole had argued the previous day, and when she didn't answer her phone the next day, he assumed she was still upset. He waited until evening to attempt to apologize, only to realize Nicole was still missing. It wasn't until the evening of the second day, when Nicole still hadn't contacted her family and her phone was still unreachable, that the police decided to launch a search. They began by investigating the last known location where Nicole was seen, her home with David. An investigation of the room where Nicole Peets was last seen found no signs of evidence of kidnapping. The absence of her personal car suggested that she might have simply left on her own. The family turned to social media to spread the word and ask for help in finding their daughter. They also immediately flew to Linwood, where they started their own search efforts. They put up posters with her picture and spoke to people who knew her, hoping someone might have information about her whereabouts. The police searched for Nicole and her car, trying to determine the route she took on the day she disappeared. Tragically, the worst fears were confirmed a few days later when a jogger discovered a young woman's body in a local park area. The jogger had taken an unusual route that morning. It was there that he stumbled upon something suspicious in the shrubbery, which turned out to be a brutally mutilated, naked body. The police were immediately notified, and forensic experts suggested that the crime was violent due to the presence of severe blunt force trauma and the lack of clothing. The autopsy revealed extensive bruising, abrasions, and blunt force injuries, indicating that the victim had been severely beaten before her death. The cause of death was asphyxiation by strangulation, and it appeared that the killer had used their bare hands. Police initially believed the body they found was that of Nicole Peets, a young woman who had gone missing several days earlier and had been the subject of a citywide search. Her identity was confirmed by her family as Nicole. When Nicole's mother, Gail, saw her daughter's body at the morgue, she was overcome with grief and needed medical attention. Her husband, Rod, was also devastated, but his reaction seemed a bit unusual to some. He didn't seem truly distraught and his emotions seemed forced. However, at that time no one paid much attention to this, because everyone coped with the tragedy in their own way. Police believed the missing car was the primary target of the attack and would hold key evidence. They released a description of the gray Volkswagen Polo to the media, asking for tips. Weeks later, a security guard found the car in a parking lot on the outskirts of the city, noticing it had been parked there for an extended period. The police took the car for a thorough examination, hoping to find evidence and clues that would lead them to the perpetrator and help reconstruct the crime scene. However, their search yielded nothing. The only fingerprints and DNA found in the car belonged to Nicole and her husband, who occasionally drove the vehicle. Despite the lack of concrete evidence, the investigators were reluctant to return the car to David. In addition, the victim's lack of clothes raised questions. The numerous injuries suggested a rage-driven attack, possibly a personal vendetta. However, Nicole was known for her kind nature and had no known enemies. The investigation into this complex case was on the verge of going cold, with no new leads or directions to pursue after nearly a year. The lack of witnesses and surveillance cameras in the parking lot where the car was abandoned made it difficult to gather evidence. However, one peculiar detail stood out. The driver's seat was positioned in a way that suggested the person driving the car was significantly taller and larger than the victim. The police obtained footage from the gas station security cameras, but the contents remained unclear. Frustrated by the lack of progress and the fact that the killer was still at large, Nicole's parents took matters into their own hands. They hired a private investigator to gather information and verify their suspicions, and offered a $10,000 reward to anyone who could provide useful information about the case. David, the husband of the victim, initially showed interest in the investigation, but his enthusiasm waned after 6 months. He eventually remarried, having a child with his new wife. This news was devastating for Gail, the victim's mother, as her daughter had been unable to have children, and David had often criticized her for this. Gail repeatedly suggested that David might be the culprit, but many people believed Gail was motivated by resentment. The police seemed to dismiss this theory altogether. However, 6 years after the crime, David was taken into custody as the prime suspect. One unusual circumstance was a gas station security footage that captured a man using Nicole credit card. The footage appeared to show a man resembling David, but he wore a head covering and dark glasses, making a positive identification impossible. Although this recording was not definitive proof, it was still added to the case file. Another discrepancy was the missing wedding ring, which Nicole never removed from her finger. Initially, investigators believed the killer might have taken it, but they found the ring in a box on the dressing table in Nicole's home. During the examination of Nicole's body, experts found a dental mouth guard in her mouth. This device was specifically designed to prevent teeth grinding, a condition known as bruxism, which Nicole experienced during sleep. The mouth guard had been prescribed to her shortly before her death due to her nervousness, which caused involuntary muscle spasms in her jaw. These spasms had led to the erosion of her tooth enamel and chipping of her teeth. The investigation concluded that Nicole was likely killed in her own bed while she was still asleep. This theory was supported by the fact that she was not wearing any clothes and her body was clean, with no signs of a struggle. Additionally, Nicole's face was free of makeup. The mouth guard found at the scene was not a significant factor, as Nicole had only recently started using it. Moreover, forensic experts analyzed the driver's seat in the car and found that the last person to sit behind the wheel had the same physical characteristics as David, Nicole's husband. The car only had fingerprints belonging to David and Nicole, suggesting that no one else had been in the vehicle. A crucial discovery was made possible by advances in technology. The killer had attempted to mislead the investigation by using Nicole's phone in various parts of the city. However, at the same locations and times, David's phone was also active, revealing a suspicious coincidence. Furthermore, it was discovered that David had a motive for the crime, and the seemingly perfect family was actually facing a severe crisis. Nicole was juggling multiple responsibilities, studying, working 2 jobs, and supporting others struggling with addiction. Meanwhile, her husband led a carefree life, unable to hold down a job and spending most of his time in bars and clubs. He would often use Nicole's earnings to fund his nightlife, including affairs with other women. Nicole tried to intervene in her husband's addiction, suggesting AA meetings, but he dismissed her concerns. the situation worsened as David's infidelity was revealed. After Nicole's sudden and mysterious death, David hastily filed for a large insurance payout and began a new relationship. It was later discovered that David had been having an affair with a woman named Jane for several months prior to Nicole's death. While Nicole was working or studying, David would often meet Jane at bars and clubs. Just before Nicole's birthday, David brought Jane to their home, where Nicole unexpectedly walked in on them. This led to a heated argument between Nicole and David. Nicole confided in her mother about the incident just days before she mysteriously vanished. Gail had her suspicions about her son-in-law from the start, but the police claimed they didn't have enough evidence to arrest him. As a result, the case was closed, and the family was left in the dark about the investigation. Over time, they lost hope that the person responsible would be held accountable. After his wife's death, David received a significant insurance payout, which he spent on lavish gifts for his mistress, Jane. Gail believed that Jane might have been involved in the crime, but she was only questioned as a witness due to lack of evidence. In 2013, David went to court, still denying any involvement in his wife's death. His lawyers initially argued that the evidence against him was circumstantial and not conclusive. However, as the prosecution presented more incriminating evidence, the defense shifted their strategy. They portrayed David as a victim, suggesting that his wife, Nicole, had become unbearable to live with due to her addiction to pain pills and drinking. The claims that Nicole was unstable were unfounded and disputed by everyone who knew her. Even if she had lost control, that would not have justified David's brutal murder of his wife. Ultimately, David's guilt was proven beyond a doubt, and he received the maximum sentence allowed by state law. David was sentenced to 18 years in prison, but he will be eligible for parole in 2025 after serving 2/3 of his sentence. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Anna Repkina. Anna Alexieva Repkina, a charming and outgoing woman from Chelyabinsk, Russia, hailed from a good family. With a strong work ethic, passion for travel, rock music, and cats, she owned several. Anna was a vibrant individual. She loved capturing life's precious moments through photography and valued romantic relationships deeply. Her ultimate goal was to find true love, settle down, have children, and build a happy family. Anna's remarkable sense of humor made her a delight to be around, something her friends and acquaintances often highlighted. However, her life took a dramatic turn in 2016, when her high school sweetheart of 7 years ended their relationship, leaving her devastated. Despite this heartbreak, Anna refused to give up on her dreams. She took the initiative to try online dating, determined to find her ideal partner. On a Russian dating site, she came across a promising match who seemed to possess all the qualities she was looking for. Anna met a charming young man named William Hargrove, a 26-year-old from Oregon who worked as a bouncer and mechanic. What drew her to him was his fascination with Russian culture, but more importantly, his adoration for her. William consistently showed kindness to Anna, often complimenting her and making an effort to be present for her whenever she needed him, despite the physical distance between them. Those who knew him described William as a charismatic and passionate person with a great sense of humor, who inspired those around him to chase their dreams. As they developed their online relationship over several months, their bond grew stronger. They seemed perfectly suited for each other, sharing similar tastes in music and a love for live performances, as well as a similar sense of humor. Friends who knew them noted that Anna and William complemented each other beautifully. William's caring nature was evident in his thoughtful gestures, such as sending Anna flowers despite being separated by oceans. Anna and William's online chemistry was undeniable, but they wanted to confirm their connection in person. So in December 2016, they decided to take their relationship to the next level. Anna booked a flight to Oregon to spend the Christmas holidays with William. However, she initially made a mistake and booked a ticket to Portland, Maine, instead of Portland, Oregon. Before realizing the error, she had already flown to Maine, but she was determined to make it work. After fixing her flight issues, Anna finally arrived in Oregon. William picked her up from the airport, and they spent the next 10 days together. He took her on sightseeing trips, and they enjoyed activities like visiting the seaside, playing in the snow, and cuddling by the fire. William also introduced her to his friends, and they celebrated New Year's Eve together, sharing a romantic kiss at midnight. It was the perfect Christmas experience for Anna. After a whirlwind 10-day visit, William popped the question to Anna using his grandmother's emerald ring, and she happily accepted. However, what Anna didn't know was that William was leading a double life. During their time together, he had also been secretly seeing his 33-year-old landlady, Michelle Chavez, behind her back. William rented a room in Michelle's house, and it seemed he also held a special place in her heart. Michelle was married with 2 children, but this didn't deter her romantic involvement with William. Their affair had been ongoing for over a year when Anna, William's girlfriend, visited Michelle's home. Unbeknownst to Anna, she was meeting her rival, as Michelle was her boyfriend's landlady. Michelle showed understanding when William brought Anna to her home, perhaps thinking William would never leave her or believing Anna was insignificant, much like her own husband. Whatever the reason, Michelle didn't expose their secret. It wasn't until Michelle discovered the engagement ring that her husband's stance on the situation became clear to everyone involved. Meanwhile, Anna returned to Russia, unaware of the drama she had left behind. After posting a photo of her engagement ring on Facebook, the social media algorithm brought the post to Michelle's attention. Michelle's anger wasn't solely due to William's engagement to another woman. Michelle planned to leave her husband to be with William and, as a symbol of her commitment, took off her wedding ring and gave it to him. However, she soon discovered that the ring was identical to the engagement ring William had given to Anna. It turned out that William had given Anna Michelle's own wedding ring, which had been recycled. Michelle confronted William about this, and he tried to calm her down, insisting that Anna meant nothing to him and promising to break off their engagement on March 1, 2017. Meanwhile, Anna had packed her bags, including her wedding dress, and had quit her job, ready to start a new life with William in another part of the world. Michelle was unhappy about this development. Anna's mother, Yelena, also had reservations about her daughter's hasty decision. She was unsure about William, whom Anna barely knew, and thought she was rushing into things. Anna, however, was convinced that she was in love and saw no reason to wait. Yelena finally released Michelle from her grasp. Michelle, realizing Anna's visit was not a social call, grew angry. She demanded that William find another place to live, refusing to let the engaged couple stay under her roof. William complied, renting an apartment for himself and Anna. However, he continued to secretly see Michelle, sneaking out to visit her and reassuring her of his commitment to her, downplaying Anna's importance. Michelle became increasingly worried about William's growing relationship with Anna, so she took action. She contacted Anna on Facebook, revealing everything about her and William's ongoing affair. Anna reported the conversation to William, but he dismissed it as Michelle's jealousy. Anna believed him, and the couple decided to ignore Michelle's warnings and focus on their future together. They set a wedding date for March 23rd and planned a beachside ceremony. Anna wore the wedding dress she had brought from Russia, and they headed to the beach. However, the officiant failed to show up. After waiting for what felt like an eternity, they returned home. They planned to try to get married again in April. On that same day, surveillance footage captured the couple buying food at a McDonald's drive-thru. Anna sat in the passenger seat, still wearing her wedding dress. William had told her that the officiant was sick, but that was a lie. Despite claiming he didn't love Anna, William had kept her convinced that he wasn't invested in their relationship. However, Michelle had grown tired of William's manipulation. On April 15th, Michelle gave William an ultimatum: choose between her and Anna. Michelle made it clear that if Anna wasn't gone by April 20th, she would take drastic action, build a snowman, a sinister phrase meaning to kill someone, and hide their body in a snowy area where it would never be found. After issuing her threat, Michelle lost contact with William and assumed he had chosen Anna over her. She left him voicemails to express her feelings. On Sunday, April 16th, William phoned Michelle to share the news that he was single again, having just ended his tumultuous relationship with Anna, who was now headed back to Russia. Coincidentally, William had hit a deer with his car and was waiting at the Ali Martile store for repairs. He asked Michelle to meet him there. As it was Easter Sunday, Michelle was attending a family gathering, but she excused herself to join William. When she arrived, they reconnected by having an intimate moment in William's car, reaffirming their strong connection. On April 17th, Anna's body was discovered in the forest. Initially, investigators didn't know her identity, as there was no identification found with her body, and she had only been in the state for about a month. The crime scene lacked a murder weapon, but was littered with trash. However, amidst the debris, a clear plastic bag caught their attention. Inside, they found a KFC receipt, an empty Pepsi cup, and a KFC chicken paper bag. The KFC receipt turned out to be the crucial clue in solving the case. It contained a date, time, and debit card number, which led investigators to Kevin Thomas. When questioned, Kevin revealed that he was best friends with William and had been getting to know Anna. He also shared a tradition with William where they would eat lunch at KFC every Friday. The receipt, it turned out, was from a purchase made about a week before Kevin's questioning. The investigation into Anna's death led to the discovery of William's deceitful behavior. In his interview, Kevin revealed that William had borrowed his shotgun, claiming he wanted to go to the woods to clear his head. However, William never returned the weapon. The police began to suspect William and Michelle after hearing Kevin's statement. Following Anna's death, William's behavior became increasingly unusual and suspicious. He withdrew money from Anna's bank account to pay off his debts, and was caught on camera buying cigars and Star Wars Legos at various stores. William also confided in Kevin that he was spending money recklessly to cope with his emotions. Furthermore, he began researching time travel and even reached out to strangers on WhatsApp, offering to exchange his soul for the opportunity to go back in time. William wanted to travel back in time to April 16th to prevent a situation caused by his best friend's mistake. However, on that day, William was seen crying in a store employee's arms, claiming his girlfriend had just broken up with him. He had moved back in with Michelle, but was picked up by the police and questioned. The police asked William about his whereabouts on April 16th, and he said he was on a drive with Michelle. When asked about Anna, he denied having a romantic relationship with her, saying they had only gone on 2 dates, and he had ended things. According to William, their last interaction was in mid-March, when Anna, mistakenly, posted their engagement on Facebook, causing trouble with Michelle. When questioned about the trash found near his late fiancée, or the woman he dated, William admitted to littering, but claimed it was just KFC trash and a can from the general store, not related to Anna's death. About 40 miles separated the Alk General Store from the logging road. However, the investigators did not believe William's alibi. Lieutenant Chris Duffett, one of the investigators, quickly increased the pressure by revealing that William's trash had been discovered near a murder victim at a different location. Initially, William reacted with surprise and heartbreak, feigning disbelief that he was being questioned about a murder. 2 days after Anna Rapina's body was found, her fiancé William Hargrove was arrested for her murder on April 19th. During the investigation, Michelle was also questioned about her whereabouts on April 16th, the day Anna was killed. At first, Michelle stuck to a rehearsed alibi, claiming she and William had spent the day together, with William picking her up from her mother's house and going on a drive. However, Michelle later changed her story, admitting she had lied initially. She then claimed that she and William had planned to meet up, but he never called or showed up. When the police revealed that William was in custody for murder, Michelle's response was surprisingly calm, saying only, "Okay." The investigator pressed Michelle on her lack of emotion, which eventually broke down, and she tearfully attributed her initial calm to being in shock. William Hargrove was indicted on charges of murder, identity theft, and 2 counts of theft in June 2018. His trial began in October 2019, with the prosecution seeking the maximum penalties for each charge, while the defense argued for a more lenient sentence. William's defenders claimed he was innocent and that Melissa, the spurned lover, was the true culprit. However, the prosecution presented a strong case against William, backed by evidence and motive. The evidence showed that William was torn between 2 lovers, with Anna pressuring him to make a choice. There were records of William and Anna driving together in an Alon car. On the day of Anna's murder, William's cell phone was tracked to the logging road at 4:30 p.m. The shotgun used to kill Anna was found in William's car, with his fingerprints being the only ones on the weapon. Despite denying any involvement in Anna's death, William was caught using her money to go shopping and pay off his car insurance. He was even filmed withdrawing cash from an ATM using her card. The prosecution argued that William had driven Anna to the forest, gotten her out of the car, and then executed her with his shotgun. The prosecution claimed that William was faced with a choice between Anna and Michelle, leading to his actions. In contrast, the defense argued that their client was innocent. According to the prosecution, the evidence pointed to Melissa as the perpetrator. A threat from Melissa to build a snowman with Anna, her cell phone found near the logging road, and Anna's cell phone discovered in Melissa's house suggested that Melissa had planned the crime. Melissa, who was not charged with any crimes, testified as a witness for the prosecution. She revealed that she worked as a late-night cab driver and was married to an Oregon State University instructor, but their marriage was loveless and open. She met William at a bar where he worked and, with her husband's permission, began a romantic relationship with him. As they grew closer, William rented a room in her house. When Anna entered the picture, Melissa was not threatened, having a similar open relationship with William. Melissa explained that by her second visit, she couldn't tolerate the situation anymore, especially when she saw her own wedding ring on Anna's finger. Although she had given William an ultimatum, she had no role in William's actions that hurt Anna. Melissa clarified that she never intended for Anna to get hurt or killed. She denied the defense's allegations, stating that the threat about building a snowman was just a joke, a light-hearted family comment, even if it was a bit extreme. She acknowledged that her cell phone was found in the forest, but William was the one who drove her there. She didn't know why or what he planned. Furthermore, William had given her Anna's cell phone the day before he was questioned. As his partner, she naturally held onto it for him. Melissa's testimony lasted 14 hours, and she was not the only one. Around 70 other people testified, including Anna's mother, William's best friend and roommate, some of Melissa's family members, and others. Throughout the case, Melissa faced intense scrutiny, particularly in her hometown in Oregon, where she was criticized and ostracized by the locals. Michelle had reached a low point and attempted suicide, but fortunately, it was unsuccessful. The prosecutor praised Michelle's efforts to take responsibility, calling her actions tough and super tough. After a month of court appearances, the judge asked the jury to deliver their verdict. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours and returned with a decision. Despite the defense's efforts, they couldn't find Michelle guilty of Anna's death. There was no physical evidence linking Michelle to the crime scene or the weapon used. In fact, she had a solid alibi. She was celebrating Easter at her mother's house, and multiple witnesses could vouch for her presence. On the other hand, William maintained his not guilty plea, but the overwhelming evidence against him led to his conviction on all charges. He was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole in 25 years. Anna's attorney announced plans to appeal the verdict. Notably, the jurors developed a strong connection with each other during the trial. After the trial, they visited the logging trail, where Anna's life was tragically cut short, to pay their respects to her memory. Anna will be remembered as a courageous young woman who left her home in Russia to build a new life in the United States. Anna was a loving person who openly shared her love with others. She was cherished by many during her lifetime, and her memory will continue to be loved and honored. The prosecutor, Amy Matsko, stated, "Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Michael Haight. Michael Haight was born on January 7, 1980 in Seattle, Washington, and later moved to Cedar City, Utah, with his family after his father finished dental school. As a child, Michael was very active and enjoyed playing sports like baseball, basketball, and soccer. He also excelled in school and achieved the rank of Eagle Scout. After graduating from high school in 1998, Michael worked at a fish plant in Alaska for the summer, where he quickly proved himself as a leader, rising to the position of line manager and overseeing a team of over a dozen men. This experience showcased his strong work ethic and dedication. Michael then embarked on a mission trip to South Brazil with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which deepened his faith and commitment to his religious community. When he returned to the United States, he pursued a business degree at Southern Utah University, graduating in 2004. During his time at the university, Michael met his future wife, Tasha Earle, and they fell in love. They got married in the St. George Temple on May 10, 2003. Michael appeared to be a devoted husband and father, often spending quality time with his family at sports events, school concerts, and working on projects together in the garage. On January 4, 2023, a shocking discovery was made at the Haight residence in Enoch. 8 bodies were found, leaving investigators and neighbors stunned. The events leading up to this gruesome finding began when Tasha Haight missed an online appointment and her husband Michael failed to show up for work. Their concerned colleagues contacted the police to perform a welfare check at the Haight residence. When officers arrived, they knocked on the door but received no response. As they surveyed the property, it seemed empty. Considering the Haight's had 5 children, the police reached out to the Iron County School District to check if any of the kids were in school that day. However, it was found that none of the children were present. Before entering the home, the police cleared the premises to ensure it was safe to do so. After a thorough search, authorities confirmed that no one required medical attention and there was no active threat. The Haight's single-story residence with a basement was declared a crime scene, and detectives arrived shortly after. In the main bedroom, detectives found 4-year-old Gavin lying on his stomach, his head turned to the left, with one arm under his head on a pillow and a blanket covering part of his body. Tasha, Gavin's mother, was also partially covered by the blanket. On the other side of the bed, detectives found an older woman, later identified as Gail Earle, Tasha's mother, lying on her back with her head resting on a pillow and partially covered by a blanket, similar to her daughter and grandson. In Bry's room, the 12-year-old girl was found lying in bed, slightly inclined and partially covered with a blanket. In Aman's room, a 7-year-old boy was found lying face down in the corner, without a pillow or blanket. His twin sister Sienna was discovered in her bedroom, lying on her left side in bed, with her head on a pillow and covered with a blanket. The eldest child, 17-year-old Macy, was found in her bed, with her head on a pillow and her body covered with a blanket. In the exercise room of the basement, the detectives found Michael Haight lying on top of a sleeping bag. Sadly, all 8 family members were found dead from gunshot wounds. It quickly became clear to the detectives that Michael Haight was the main suspect, and they believed he had killed his wife, mother-in-law, and 5 children before taking his own life. When detectives started investigating, A neighbor provided vital information that helped them reconstruct the crime's timeline. The neighbor told police she woke up at 3:30 a.m. to use the bathroom, and as she left her room, heard a loud bang that sounded like fireworks. However, realizing it was after the allowed date for fireworks in the neighborhood, she felt annoyed rather than alarmed by the noise. The neighbor reported hearing an initial loud bang, followed by two more in quick succession, then a short pause, another bang, and a longer pause before the final bang. Based on this testimony and the condition of the 8 bodies found inside the house, the detective inferred that the loud noises heard around 3:30 a.m. were directly connected to the events that unfolded that night, leading them to believe that Michael Haight committed the brutal killings during this time frame. During the investigation into the Haight family murders, detectives discovered a 2020 report from an unnamed individual who had notified the Utah Division of Child and Family Services about abuse in the Haight household. According to the report, 14-year-old Macy had confided in this individual about her fear of her father, sparking a further investigation. The authorities then interviewed Macy and her parents separately. During Macy's interview, she revealed disturbing information. Her father had choked her on multiple occasions, and she lived in fear of being killed by him. She reported that the violent attacks began in 2017 and recounted an incident where her father grabbed her by the shoulders and pushed her into a wooden piece of furniture. Michael Haight denied hurting his daughter when questioned by detectives, passing off the incidents as misunderstandings and attributing his emotional state to his father's recent death and his brother's divorce. He claimed to have taken out his frustrations on his older daughter. Despite this, Tasha chose not to press charges, and the Utah Department of Children and Family Services, the Enoch Police Department, and the Iron County Prosecutor's Office also declined to pursue the case, as it did not meet the legal requirements for prosecution. A lethality assessment was conducted with Tasha, which indicated that her relationship with Michael was not life-threatening. As a result, victim services were made available to Tasha and her children for several months. Further investigation revealed a different side of Michael, unknown to the community. According to Tasha's friends, they had to speak quietly or turn on the kitchen water when visiting Tasha, as they suspected Michael was monitoring and eavesdropping on their conversations. Tasha's friends would often help her clean the house when they visited, which prevented Michael from finding fault with her. When texting Tasha, her friends noticed that she would respond with brief, positive messages, likely to maintain a positive image in case Michael read them. This suggested that everything was fine in their marriage. The detectives investigating the case discovered that Michael exhibited highly controlling behavior towards Tasha. For instance, he would take away her car keys and phone to restrict her freedom. Another red flag was his overreaction when Tasha bought a $30 rug from Walmart to replace a dirty one, which was a legitimate need. Michael's anger was unwarranted, and he claimed the purchase was excessive. Tasha confided in her friends that her 7-year-old son, Aman, was increasingly imitating Michael's bad behavior. When Tasha gave Aman instructions, he would respond, "That's not my job," which concerned Tasha as it showed his lack of responsibility and disregard for authority. Tasha's friends reported that in 2022, Tasha attempted to prioritize her own well-being by getting her nails done, a rare treat for her given her many responsibilities. However, her husband Michael refused to let her do so, imposing strict limits on her autonomy and freedom. Moreover, Michael frequently disregarded or ignored Tasha's instructions, and their friend Aman often followed his lead in doing so. Tasha felt more confident in her appearance after indulging herself, and she decided to get her nails done every month. However, Michael was unhappy about this decision and expressed his disapproval, worried about the cost. Tasha explained that it would only cost $25 per month, but Michael was unconvinced, arguing that the money could be better spent on their children. Michael's reaction was rooted in his need for control and sense of financial responsibility towards their family. Around the same time, Tasha started prioritizing her self-care and began losing weight, which had been a sensitive topic for her since Michael had often called her fat and ugly. However, instead of being supportive, Michael became furious and accused Tasha of cheating on him, trying to explain the sudden change in her appearance. Michael's controlling behavior escalated as he tried to manipulate Tasha's weight loss, pleading with her to stop losing weight because he was worried that other men might find her attractive. This demand was driven by his own insecurities and desire for complete control over Tasha's body and behavior. Tasha's friends also told the police about an incident where the kitchen table broke and Tasha needed to buy a new one. However, Michael refused to give her the money, further demonstrating his controlling behavior. Tasha was fed up with the old table and decided to take initiative by refinishing it to make it look better and more functional. However, Michael was unhappy with her decision because she didn't ask for his permission first. Michael was extremely frugal during the holiday season, despite earning a good income. He only gave Tasha $100 for each of their 5 children to buy presents, which was not enough in Tasha's opinion. Tasha always made sure her children had a wonderful Christmas, but Michael refused to provide more funds, claiming that he worked hard for his money and saw no reason to give more to his family. He believed that his income was rightfully his alone. Michael's passion for reducing waste and conserving resources led him to implement strict rules on household habits. He forced Tasha to wash and reuse plastic bags, even if they had been used only once or multiple times. This excessive demand for reusing bags added to Tasha's responsibilities, leaving her feeling burdened and overwhelmed. Michael's controlling behavior extended to every aspect of Tasha's life, including her daily routines. For instance, he demanded that she use baby wipes for cleaning, claiming it was better for the environment and more cost-effective. However, this requirement caused Tasha discomfort, hygiene issues, and unnecessary stress. If Tasha failed to follow Michael's instructions, she would face severe consequences, which he made clear would lead to serious trouble. This threat instilled fear and submission in Tasha, leaving her no choice but to obey Michael's demands. Tasha confided in her friends that while Michael had been cruel to her throughout their marriage, he had never directed this cruelty towards their children until the late 2010s. However, over time, the abuse towards their daughter Macy escalated, driving her to consider suicide. Michael had unrealistically high expectations for his daughter Macy, demanding she earn perfect grades despite her struggles, which were exacerbated by the emotional burden of his abusive behavior. This pressure was crushing for Macy. Macy's friends shared a disturbing incident with the detective. One evening, Michael returned home to find Macy comforted by her mother. He became enraged and ordered Macy to clean her room. This event left Macy deeply disturbed, remembering the hatred and evil she saw in her father's eyes. The detectives also discovered an incident where 7-year-old Briley disobeyed Michael while playing with a changing table. Michael responded by blaming his wife Tasha for their children's behavior, calling them the worst and most disrespectful in the world. He then humiliated Tasha, calling her fat and ugly in front of their 5 children. This painful incident prompted Tasha to plan her escape and file for divorce after 20 years of marriage. Tasha realized she had to leave her husband Michael after witnessing his abusive behavior and lack of self-control. She knew staying in the marriage would negatively impact her children, and their well-being was more important than her marital commitment. In December 2022, Tasha filed for divorce, but asked for the papers to be delivered after Christmas to give her children one last normal holiday before the separation. When Michael received the papers, he tried to act normal, but Tasha saw through it. He told her to leave the children behind, but she refused, taking them to her mother's home in Lynn, Utah. Michael showed up at his mother-in-law's house, trying to convince Tasha to go for a ride with him, but she refused, sensing danger. After filing for divorce, Tasha's mother moved in to support her and the children. However, Michael's actions worsened the situation. He refused to leave the family home, instead moving into the basement. Tasha discovered he had secretly transferred $220,000 from their children's savings accounts without her knowledge or consent. She also found that her inherited firearms were missing, leaving her family vulnerable. The couple's children, Macy and Briley, were affected by the constant drama at home. Macy had a secret phone to record her father's outbursts as evidence for the divorce, while Briley found solace at a neighbor's house. Both girls were relieved about their parents' divorce. On January 3, 2023, Tasha met with her attorney, expressing concerns about her divorce and Michael's volatile behavior. Although she had relocated him to the basement, the attorneys pressed her about feeling safe. Tasha reassured them she never feared for her or her children's well-being, but in hindsight, her optimism was tragically misplaced. A disturbing discovery emerged from the digital evidence found on the family's computers and cell phones. Just days before the tragic shooting, Michael made a series of concerning Google searches on December 30th at 10:41 p.m. These searches focused on firearms and shooting-related topics, revealing his sinister intentions. The search results showed Michael had asked alarming questions, such as the loudness of a 9mm gunshot and what a gunshot sounds like. Before taking his own life, Michael wrote a note expressing his desire to end the controlling behavior he felt he was subjected to by his wife. He stated that he couldn't handle the situation for another day and wanted to escape the manipulation. Michael's note conveyed deep frustration and desperation, as he repeatedly asked for help but felt ignored. He emphasized his determination not to be a burden to society. The details of this case have left many in shock, revealing a deeply dysfunctional family plagued by violence. Michael's actions were premeditated and calculated, as he carefully planned the murders to catch his wife and children off guard. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Heidi Firkus. Heidi Marie Eriksson was born on December 14, 1984, to John and Alinda Eriksson, and was the youngest of their 3 children and their only daughter. She was known for her playful and artistic nature, and lived her life to the fullest. After graduating from high school in 2003, she continued her education at the University of Northwestern in Roseville. During this time, she was a regular attendee at Calvary Church in the city, where she had been involved since her early years. It was at Calvary Church that she met Nick Firkus, with whom she shared the role of youth group leaders, serving their community with dedication and passion. Nicholas Firkus was born on February 25, 1983, to Julie and Steve Firkus. He was a driven and ambitious young man who dedicated himself to his work as the director of operations at a reputable carpet cleaning company. Known for his well-rounded personality and strong work ethic, he had found his true match in Heidi, whom he met at their shared place of worship, Calvary Church, in 2005. At the ages of 22 and 20, respectively, Nick and Heidi made the joyful decision to take their relationship to the next level. Surrounded by their loved ones and the familiar walls of the church that had witnessed the blossoming of their love, they exchanged vows, sealing their commitment to each other. To their friends and community, Nick and Heidi's marriage appeared perfect. They shared a love for travel, biking, and their church. They often hosted dinner parties for their loved ones. Heidi had recently started working at a financial firm where her father was employed. Their bond seemed to be growing stronger with time. However, behind closed doors, a different story was unfolding. On the morning of April 25, 2010, Heidi called 911 from her home in St. Paul, Minnesota, reporting a break-in. Only 38 seconds into the call, Heidi yelled no, and a gunshot was heard. 65 seconds later, Nick used Heidi's phone to contact the dispatcher, saying, "Please, someone just broke into my house and shot me and my wife." Nick was overcome with grief, repeatedly crying and begging for help, saying, "Oh my Heidi, my wife is dead, please get here." He also shouted no in despair. When the police arrived, they found Heidi unresponsive on the kitchen floor with a gunshot wound to her back. Nick was beside her, still on the phone with the 911 dispatcher, despite having been shot in the upper left leg. He was extremely upset and told the police that 1 or 2 intruders had broken into their home. According to Nick, he had grabbed his shotgun and tried to escape with Heidi through the back door, heading towards their detached garage. However, the intruder managed to take the shotgun from him and shot both Nick and Heidi. Sadly, Heidi was pronounced dead at the scene, her life cut short by the tragic events. Nick, meanwhile, was rushed to the hospital for treatment and was later questioned by the police while still in the hospital. Police asked Nick why he and Heidi left the safety of their bedroom to face the potential danger. Nick explained that they were trying to escape through the back door. After receiving medical treatment for his wounds at the hospital, Nick was released just 3 hours later and was interviewed again at the police station about the incident. At the police station, Nick provided a detailed account of what happened. He recalled watching a movie with Heidi and having a glass of wine before going to bed around midnight. Nick said he woke up around 6:10 to 6:15 a.m. when he heard the screen door open and someone fiddling with the doorknob. The investigators questioned Nick about locking the deadbolt, and he admitted that he and Heidi usually made sure to lock it, but he believed he had forgotten to do so that particular night. After hearing the noises, Nick retrieved his shotgun from the upstairs closet, which he had brought up from the basement a month ago because he noticed it was starting to rust. Although the shotgun was initially empty, Nick loaded it when he heard the noises. He then woke up Heidi, instructed her to call 911, and told her to leave the house and go to the garage where their cars were parked. Nick also shared that he and Heidi had a safety plan in place in case of trouble, which was to go to the garage where their cars were parked. Nick, who is right-handed, was holding a pair of jeans in his right hand and a shotgun in his left hand as he walked behind Heidi toward the garage. They stopped at the front door, where Heidi retrieved her wallet from a table. Suddenly, the door burst open and a tall, dark-skinned man rushed in. The intruder wore a dark hooded sweatshirt with the hood pulled tightly around his face. Nick dropped the jeans, and the intruder grabbed the shotgun barrel. The two men then engaged in a physical struggle. During the altercation, the gun fired, and Nick said his finger accidentally slipped onto the trigger. He believed he hit Heidi in the back, causing her to collapse immediately. They continued fighting over the shotgun, which fired again, hitting Nick in the upper thigh and causing him to fall to the ground. The intruder then fled out the front door. Nick told investigators that Heidi was unresponsive, and he eventually lost consciousness. Nick told the police that his house was supposed to be foreclosed the next day, and he and his partner Heidi had planned to inform their parents and friends about their situation on the same day. According to Nick, they had fallen behind on their bills, and their house had been foreclosed on and sold to someone else. As a result, they were required to vacate the premises, but they hadn't shared this information with anyone. Their plan was to pack up their belongings on Sunday and Monday morning, leaving some items in the garage to collect later, and then find someone to stay with temporarily. However, their plans were disrupted, and their peaceful home was left with an air of tragedy. The lives of Nick and Heidi were forever changed by the devastating events of that morning. The investigation continued, with law enforcement securing the area and interviewing residents. None of the neighbors reported seeing anyone leaving the Furcus residence. However, one neighbor, Brendan O'Connell, who was looking after kittens in a nearby house, told the authorities that he heard an argument followed by gunfire. Nick begged for mercy, claiming a shooter had attacked him and a woman. After talking to police, Nick's lawyer hired an artist to update the sketch, details emerging, an African-American male, 40 to 60 years old. The police initially searched for an unknown African-American male intruder based on Nick's description, but found no evidence or witnesses to support his story. Despite a thorough investigation, no one was arrested or charged in connection with Heidi's death, leaving the case unsolved for many years. Years later, a surprising revelation came to light. Over 10 years had passed since Heidi's murder, and Nick had seemingly moved on with his life, marrying Rachel and starting a family. However, when financial troubles resurfaced, Rachel began to suspect that Nick was hiding something. Rachel's concerns about their financial situation and Nick's evasiveness sparked her curiosity, prompting her to investigate Nick's past. As she dug deeper, she uncovered secrets and inconsistencies that made her question everything she thought she knew about her husband and his possible involvement in Heidi's death. Rachel was unaware of the financial troubles her husband Nick was hiding, similar to those he had faced with his previous wife Heidi years earlier. Her concerns prompted her to contact the authorities, which renewed interest in Heidi's murder case. Investigators began looking into Nick's second marriage to Rachel, whom he married in 2012. However, by the time Rachel spoke with the authorities, she had already divorced Nick due to his growing financial problems. Before their 2019 divorce, Rachel had recorded a conversation where she confronted Nick about his deception. She told investigators that Nick was repeating the same patterns he had with Heidi, including failing to pay property taxes. In fact, she had seen a letter warning that they would be evicted by 2020 if the taxes weren't paid. Rachel's decision to contact the police with her suspicions set off a chain of events that would once again bring the Heidi Fergus murder case into the spotlight. Sergeant Nicole Sipes, assigned to the case, listened carefully to Rachel's concerns and began re-examining the evidence. Sergeant Nicole Sykes of the St. Paul Police Department was determined to solve Heidi's murder. To uncover the truth, she made a bold decision to ask the FBI to analyze the 911 call audio recordings. She hoped to find crucial clues that could explain what happened on the night of the murder. The FBI's analysis yielded a surprising result. It found no evidence of a third person being present during the incident. This discovery contradicted the husband's earlier statement to the police, leaving Sergeant Sipes and her team puzzled. If only Heidi and her husband were in the house, what led to her death? The absence of a third person increased suspicion around the husband's possible involvement in the crime. Sergeant Sipes was more determined than ever to uncover the truth and bring justice to Heidi and her grieving family. The FBI's findings opened up a new avenue of investigation, which Sergeant Sipes was committed to pursuing with increased intensity. The investigators obtained financial documents that disputed Nicholas Fergus's earlier statements, further implicating him in Heidi's murder. Fergus's account of the events surrounding Heidi's death kept changing. Initially, he claimed that an intruder took his gun and shot both him and Heidi. Later, he said that the intruder didn't take the gun, but his own finger accidentally pulled the trigger, hitting Heidi in the back. The crime scene investigation yielded no signs of a struggle, such as overturned furniture or marks on the walls, contradicting Fergus's account. Forensic analysis of the scene also disputed Fergus's version of the shooting, particularly the trajectory of the bullet that struck Heidi. Furthermore, Heidi's 911 call made no mention of an intruder, and there was no evidence of a break-in or intruder at the crime scene. This lack of evidence led investigators to suspect that Fergus had planned to cover up his involvement in Heidi's death. As a result, an arrest warrant was issued for Nick Fergus on May 19, 2021, over a decade after Heidi's death. A SWAT team arrested Fergus at his home in Mounds View. The surprise arrest of Nick stemmed from Rachel's suspicions and the tireless efforts of Police Sergeant Nicole Sipes. This sudden development astonished many who thought the case had stalled and would never reach a resolution. As the legal proceedings progressed, the case details would be re-examined, and the truth about that fateful night would gradually emerge. At the trial, Nick Fergus maintained that he was innocent and pleaded not guilty. Many of his family members, including his father, claimed to believe in his innocence, stating that Nick's love for Heidi would have prevented him from committing such a violent act. However, the jury disagreed with their assessment. On February 10, 2023, the jury delivered a shocking verdict after deliberating for 10 hours. They found Nick, the person Heidi trusted most, guilty of her brutal murder. This outcome left everyone who knew Heidi in a state of shock and disbelief. The prosecution built a strong case against Nick by showing that he was facing severe financial difficulties, which they argued led him to kill Heidi to avoid shame and conflict. They questioned the truth of Nick's claim that a home invader was responsible, suggesting that he fabricated the story to divert attention from himself. The prosecution presented convincing evidence, including the lack of signs of forced entry and inconsistencies in Nick's account. Notably, there was no DNA or physical evidence to support the presence of an intruder, which raised serious doubts about Nick's story. Prosecutor Rachel Craker argued that Nick's inability to accept the truth of his financial deception led him to commit a shocking crime, sacrificing Heidi's life to preserve his reputation. In contrast, Nick's defense attorney, Robert Richmond, countered that it didn't make sense for Nick's financial problems to suddenly drive him to murder. Nick claimed that killing his wife would somehow boost his reputation, but this statement is illogical. After intense debates during the trial, the jury finally reached a verdict that would determine whether Nick would be held accountable for Heidi's death. The jury carefully considered the evidence, emotional testimonies, and legal arguments before delivering a unanimous verdict. Nick Fergus was guilty of first-degree murder. On April 13, 2023, the judge handed down the most severe sentence possible: life in prison without parole. Although found guilty, Nick still insists he had nothing to do with Heidi's death. He maintains his innocence even after being sentenced. When he was sentenced, Nick said, "I understand the pain and loss felt by everyone here today. Justice has been served, but it came at a great cost. A broken family, a betrayed community, and a life cut short." The verdict brought a sense of closure to Heidi's family and friends, but it also left them with the painful realization that the man they thought they knew was capable of such a heinous act. So, you must be thinking, where is Nick now? Nick is currently serving his life sentence at the Minnesota Correctional Facility located in St. Cloud, Minnesota. Here's what drove Nick to commit the tragic act. The motive behind the killing remains unclear, but there are clues. In June 2009, Nick received foreclosure papers on their house, which was then sold at a sheriff's auction the same month. 10 months before Heidi's death, eviction proceedings began in February 2010, with a hearing scheduled for March 8, 2010. Nick attended the hearing alone. Initially, the lockout was set for April 9, 2010, but Nick called the attorneys, claiming his grandmother was in the hospital and about to die. He requested the lockout be rescheduled for April 26, 2010. However, investigators found no evidence to support this claim. When questioned, Nick said Heidi was aware of their financial troubles and that they had made plans together to move out of their foreclosed home and start fresh elsewhere. The truth behind a tragic event was finally revealed by prosecutors. A husband, Nick, had been hiding their severe financial struggles from his wife, Heidi. Tragically, before she could discover the truth, he took her life. Instead of being honest with his wife and working together to find a solution, Nick chose a devastating path. According to prosecutors, Nick's motive for killing his wife was his shame and fear of revealing their financial problems, which included $118,000 in credit card debt and 22 months of late mortgage payments. By killing Heidi, Nick avoided confronting the consequences of his own deception. In the end, justice was served, but Heidi's loved ones still suffered immense pain and loss. Unfortunately, no legal punishment could undo the harm or bring back the vibrant life that was cruelly taken. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Chad Durman. Chad Durman, a 32-year-old man from Claremont County, Ohio, was married to 34-year-old Laura. They had a blended family with 3 young sons, Hunter 4, Clayton 3, and Chase 7, and a teenage stepdaughter, Alexis 16. Laura stayed at home to care for the children while Chad worked to support the family. On June 15, 2023, Chad arrived home from work earlier than usual and suggested taking a nap with his family. He invited Laura and their 3 sons to join him in their bedroom, where they spent some time laughing and chatting together. However, this joyful moment would soon turn into a horrific tragedy. After a few minutes, Chad got up and opened the gun safe next to their bed. He retrieved a MAR model HC-22 rifle, loaded it, and shot his 4-year-old son Hunter twice. The sound of the gunshot was heard by Alexis, who was watching TV in the family room. She rushed to the bedroom to see what had happened. As Alexis reached the doorway, she was met with a horrific scene, her brother being shot. Overcome with terror, she turned and fled as fast as possible. Meanwhile, Laura, who was with her kids, rushed to help her son Hunter, who had been injured. She yelled at the other children to run for their lives. Alexis saw the eldest boy fleeing in the wrong direction, towards a field, and shouted at him to keep running. Chad, however, was hot on his heels, and soon shot his own 7-year-old son, Clayton. As Clayton fell to the ground, bleeding severely, Chad stood over him, seemingly triumphant. Alexis witnessed this horror and was paralyzed with fear. She then turned and ran back into the house, grabbed her youngest brother, and fled to safety, desperate to save their lives. Chad pursued her, caught up, and pointed his gun at her, demanding that she hand over the 3-year-old, Chase. Alexis begged and pleaded with Chad to spare her life, but he tried to shoot her in the head, only to find he had run out of bullets. Alexis took advantage of the reprieve and escaped to the nearby fire station, where she frantically stopped a passerby to get help. At 4:15 p.m., a girl called 911 to report that her stepfather had killed everyone in her house. The police arrived at the scene 10 minutes later, at 4:25 p.m., and found Chad sitting on the porch with a rifle beside him. They quickly arrested him and placed him in handcuffs. Despite the chaos, Chad remained calm and didn't resist arrest. Meanwhile, his stepdaughter Laura was taken to the University of Cincinnati Medical Center to receive treatment for her injuries. Fortunately, Chad's stepdaughter Alexis had managed to escape from the house earlier that day, avoiding the fate of her 3 brothers, who were tragically killed by her stepfather. Chad was officially arrested at 4:27 p.m. on June 15, 2023. When the police took Chad into custody, he showed no signs of distress or remorse, instead behaving politely as though nothing out of the ordinary had occurred. He was later taken to jail for further questioning and investigation. During the interrogation, Chad confessed to police that he had been planning the murders since October 2022. Chad told investigators that he had gone without sleep for 3 to 4 days because the idea of harming his own sons was too much to bear. This admission provided a disturbing glimpse into his state of mind in the days leading up to the tragedy. Investigators also looked into whether Chad had a history of aggressive behavior. Chad's phone records were reviewed as part of the investigation, which revealed that he had a history of traffic violations in Claremont County, with one exception, a criminal damage incident that occurred when he was 18 years old. Additionally, a 2010 domestic violence case was discovered, in which Chad was accused of choking his father, Keith Durman. However, the case was eventually dropped due to Keith Durman's failure to appear in court as a witness for the prosecution. These records provided valuable insight into Chad's legal history and past dealings with law enforcement in the county. Meanwhile, one of Chad's neighbors, Richard Kanan, told a news channel that Chad was angry on a daily basis. The woman who called 911 also gave an interview to the news channel, describing how she was running with her little black lab and frantically screaming, "Call 911, call 911" during the incident. Chad's property tax records show that he was up to date with his payments until 2023, suggesting that he was not experiencing financial difficulties with his mortgage. When questioned by detectives, his 59-year-old father, Keith Durman, was left stunned and struggling to come to terms with the news. "I'm still trying to understand," he said. Keith Durman expressed his disbelief that his son could commit such a heinous crime. He also hinted that Chad was struggling with personal issues that had become too much to handle. The community was deeply shocked by the news of the killings, with neighbors expressing their surprise and stating that they never would have expected such actions from Chad. Initially, Chad confessed to the crimes during his interrogation, pleading guilty to all charges. However, during his first court hearing on June 23, 2023, he changed his plea to not guilty. At a subsequent hearing on the same day, Chad appeared visibly distraught, wearing a green bulletproof vest and breaking down in tears as prosecutors detailed the horrific events of June 15. The judge described the case as an act of unimaginable cruelty. The father, who stands before the court, intentionally murdered his 3 young sons, aged 3, 4, and 7, in his own home using a rifle. The chief prosecutor revealed that Chad meticulously planned the events, reflecting a disturbing premeditation. One of his sons attempted to escape by running away in a nearby field, but Chad chased and caught the boy, dragging him back to the yard where he was subsequently killed alongside his brothers. The trauma inflicted by this man on his family, the community, law enforcement, first responders, and society at large is unfathomable. While there has been a full admission of guilt, the case is still unfolding, and the full extent of the facts is still being discovered. However, the sheer horror of what is known so far is almost impossible to comprehend. Chad's murder of his own sons is one of the most horrific, craven, and cowardly acts imaginable. According to the detailed bill of particulars filed in Claremont County, the judge was presented with a disturbing account of the events. The prosecutor read aloud the sequence of incidents that led to the tragedy. Chad deliberately planned and executed the killings, lining up his sons and shooting them. When their mother attempted to intervene, Chad shot her in the hand. The prosecutor revealed that Chad fired a total of 9 shots, causing devastating harm. One boy was hit once, while the other 2 were each struck 4 times. The prosecutor, Mark T.L., emphasized the brutality of Chad's actions, stating that the brutal killings left the family and community in a state of shock. Prosecutor Mark Talvey revealed that Chad Dorman confessed to the murder, saying, "I did it. Take me to jail. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have shot them." During the interrogation, Chad also pleaded guilty. As a result, Talvey is seeking the death penalty. In a statement to the media after the court hearing, Talvey expressed his outrage, calling the crime the most sickening and horrifying he has seen. He imagined the terror the victims felt as their father, who was supposed to protect them, murdered them. Talvey vowed to do everything in his power to ensure Chad Dorman spends the rest of his life in prison. He began by offering his deepest sympathy to the family for their unspeakable tragedy. Chad Dorman is accused of committing a horrific act of violence against his own family, resulting in the tragic deaths of his 3 young sons, Hunter, Clayton, and Chase. He faces 21 charges, including 9 counts of aggravated murder, 8 counts of kidnapping, and 4 counts of felonious assault, which could lead to the death penalty if convicted. The grand jury has indicted Dorman on these charges, and he is currently being held in the Claremont County Jail with a bail set at $20 million, the highest in the county's history. Dorman's lawyer has entered a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity, claiming that he was suffering from a serious mental illness at the time of the killings. The lawyer argues that executing someone with a serious mental illness is cruel and unusual punishment, violating both the Ohio and U.S. constitutions. The prosecution has requested a mental evaluation, and a court date has been set for May 3, 2024, to discuss the lawyer's request. The defense has agreed to provide a report from a mental health expert by June 3, 2024, to support their claim. Meanwhile, a judge has ruled that Dorman's confession will be thrown out due to violations of his Miranda rights during police interrogation. The police failed to fully read him his rights and continued questioning him after he requested an attorney. Several witnesses, including police officers, have testified in court, describing their encounters with Dorman. One officer recalled that Dorman said, "Take me to jail," during the drive to the sheriff's office, while another officer remembered Dorman referencing the Bible during his interrogation, saying that he did not kill his wife. In this case, Chad expressed a desire for a lawyer during the interrogation, but the detective ignored him. When a suspect clearly requests a lawyer during a custodial interrogation, it's not the start of a test, but rather a signal for the officer to stop questioning them. However, Detective Ross failed to cease the questioning and even left Chad alone for a while before returning to continue the interrogation. During the court hearing, it was revealed that Detective Ross did not read Chad his full Miranda rights. When questioned about this, Ross admitted to not reading the rights verbatim, but claimed to have covered the most important parts. However, it was established that Ross had omitted crucial parts of the rights. Ultimately, the judge ruled that the investigators failed to follow proper procedures during Chad's arrest in June 2023, violating his Miranda rights. Chad's lawyers argued that during his 3-hour interrogation, Chad requested a lawyer at least twice, but the detectives disregarded his request and continued questioning him. Additionally, they claimed that Chad's earlier guilty plea was a result of intimidation by the investigators. The judge later ruled that the detectives failed to fully inform Chad of his rights before the interrogation. Thus, any statements made during that time would be inadmissible as evidence in future court proceedings. This ruling significantly impacted the trial, limiting the evidence that could be presented against Chad. The legal complexities and public interest in the case increased, with Chad facing a potential death penalty if convicted. His trial is scheduled to begin on July 8, 2024, but the recent ruling may change the course of the trial. A final court hearing is set for June 14th, just before the anniversary of the tragic events. The trial is expected to last from July 8th to August 2nd. However, the authorities are still unsure about the motive behind Chad's actions. The motive behind Chad's shooting of Clayton, Hunter, and Chase remains unknown, but some people believe it may have been an act of revenge against his 34-year-old wife, whom he suspected of infidelity. However, this motive has not been officially confirmed. Meanwhile, a memorial ride was held today to raise funds for the Dorman boys' family, with hundreds of people participating in the 15-mile ride through New Richmond. The event, which featured motorcycles, jeeps, and cars, attracted over 100 participants and was organized by Alan Easterday. The community came together to show their support for the family during this difficult time, while the boy's father awaits trial for their murder. The accused, Chad Dorman, is being held in custody at Claremont County Jail as the legal case against him continues. Many questions still linger, including what motivated him to commit such a heinous act against his own children. While the community is still searching for answers, they are holding on to hope that justice will be served and the truth will eventually come to light. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Tina Watson. Tina Watson was born in West Germany on February 13, 1977. She was adopted by Tommy and Cindy Thomas on January 24, 1980. Tina met her future husband, Gabe Watson, while attending the University of Alabama in Birmingham, and they started dating in January 2001. Tina was diagnosed with a heart condition called paroxysmal supraventricular tachycardia, PSVT. Despite this, she took diving lessons in January 2003 and earned her certification before marrying Gabe on October 11, 2003. At the time of their wedding, Gabe was a qualified rescue diver with 55 dives under his belt, while Tina had only dived 5 times. As Tina and Gabe's wedding day approached, Tina's anxiety grew. At 26 years old, she had already experienced 2 failed relationships and was now attempting marriage for the second time. Her first relationship with Scott McCulloch ended due to her mother's disapproval. Although her mother didn't have specific reasons, she wanted a better life for Tina and felt she was rushing into marriage. Tina and Scott eventually parted ways. Her second relationship with Stan Marks also failed, but this time, her parents weren't involved. They simply couldn't overcome their differences and mutually decided to end the relationship. It wasn't until Christmas Eve, at a party with friends, that Tina met Gabe Watson. Their relationship wasn't sparked by love at first sight but rather by mutual support after recent breakups. 2 years into their relationship, Gabe proposed to Tina. Having learned from past experiences, Tina agreed, but only if she had her parents' blessing. In 2003, Gabe decided to ask Tina's parents for their blessing in a romantic gesture, choosing Valentine's Day. However, since Tina's father was away, the dinner was rescheduled for February 15th. During the dinner, Gabe announced his decision to spend the rest of his life with Tina. Tina's father, Tommy, responded with a straightforward question, "Do you love Tina?" However, instead of answering, Watson stuttered and remained silent. His father dismissed this reaction as mere awkwardness. Tommy then posed the same question to Tina, but she also avoided a direct answer. Instead, she expressed her fear of being alone at 26 years old. After considering their responses, Tommy gave his blessing to the young couple. The wedding preparations were well underway, with Tina preoccupied with her attire, guest list, and other details. Meanwhile, Watson was solely focused on planning their honeymoon. He had already decided on a trip to the Great Barrier Reef in the Pacific Ocean near Australia, where he intended to go diving. There isn't any consulting Tina about her preferences. To explore the sunken ship, Townsville Titanic, which sank in 1911, Gabe wanted Tina to learn scuba diving. However, Tina wasn't interested in diving, unlike Gabe, who was an experienced scuba diver with 55 dives under his belt. He had even completed a rescue diving course. Gabe would occasionally take Tina scuba diving in a pool with calm water and lifeguard supervision, but that was the extent of her experience. Gabe gave Tina an ultimatum: if she didn't learn to dive by their honeymoon, she would have to stay home while he went on his adventures. Gabe took out a loan to buy Tina her own diving equipment and pay for her lessons. However, Tina's first instructor was unimpressed with her skills and warned Gabe that she wasn't suited for open ocean diving. Gabe was furious and refused to listen, accusing the instructor of being a poor teacher and discontinuing the classes. The second instructor promptly gave Tina a passing grade, but also made a comment that she only made an effort to impress her future husband. Tina and Gabe got married on October 11th, and 2 days later, they embarked on a trip to Australia, which was funded by their wedding gifts totaling $10,000. During their honeymoon, Gabe dedicated some time to making Tina happy. They explored Sydney, visited the Sydney Aquarium, and went to the zoo. Although Tina was initially excited, her mood changed as they approached their visit to the Great Barrier Reef. On October 21st, they traveled to Townsville and boarded a boat in the evening, heading to a renowned destination popular among divers. However, employees at the diving company later reported that Tina and Gabe appeared inexperienced with diving equipment. Despite Gabe having completed diving courses and having some experience, he seemed uncertain about the equipment, handling it as if it were his first time. Before diving, Gabe assisted Tina in passing the required exam, which typically should be conducted individually. When the instructor offered Tina assistance underwater, she declined. The dive log noted a strong current that day, a crucial detail in the events that unfolded. As they prepared for the dive, Gabe helped Tina with the equipment they had purchased in the US. He rented an 11-liter tank for himself but chose an 8.5-liter tank for Tina, a volume considered small and potentially hazardous given her limited experience. Initially, the dive to the Townsville Titanic wreck was not possible. Tina needed an additional air tank, which stopped her from reaching the required depth. Furthermore, Gabe's underwater computer was not working. The computer calculates the needed diving and ascent speeds and shows the oxygen levels in the cylinders. After returning to the boat and resolving the computer issue, they attempted the dive again. The wreck was located 49 feet below the surface, and Tina was the first to descend, with Gabe following closely behind. According to Gabe's account, everything seemed normal at first. However, at some point, Tina stopped, began waving at him, and then signaled that she wanted to ascend. Gabe immediately recognized that she was panicking, which was not an uncommon occurrence for her. As they were already halfway to the surface, Gabe decided to calm Tina down and maintain their current depth for a while, rather than continuing the dive, allowing her to psychologically adjust to the pressure. Gabe said that Tina had been breathing deeply, which had not been safe, and Gabe had seen that Tina was starting to sink. Gabe had attempted to grab her belt to keep her afloat, but Tina had swung her arm forcefully, knocking his mask off. As Gabe had quickly put his mask back on, Tina had drifted further away. Gabe had tried swimming towards her but had been unable to reach her. Gabe had then made the decision to return to the surface to seek help from the lifeguards. During his ascent, Gabe had met 2 other swimmers, but despite his attempts to signal for help, the swimmer had ignored him. It's worth noting that there were 2 Asian men in the vicinity, but neither corroborated Gabe's account of seeking help. Subsequent police analysis of underwater computer readings revealed that Gabe had indeed attempted to swim after his wife for a short while before giving up. However, his ascent to the surface was controlled, as he stopped at each designated depth level as instructed. Other divers at the scene claimed that Gabe had sufficient opportunity to rescue his wife, but failed to act. The incident occurred early in the dive, and Gabe had enough oxygen to swim to the bottom and back to the surface. Rescuers on the ship responded quickly, locating Tina's body at a depth of 82 feet. Despite their efforts, including 40 minutes of artificial respiration on the deck, Tina was pronounced dead. Witnesses reported that Gabe kept his distance from his wife's body, appearing indifferent to the situation, and even exhibiting carefree behavior such as smiling with other passengers on the way to shore, which he later denied in court. The autopsy results for Tina revealed some inconsistencies. Although there were no obvious signs of a violent death, there were bruises on her neck and blood in her nostrils. However, these findings are not unusual given the 82-foot depth at which her body was discovered. Toxicology tests showed no alcohol in her system, but high levels of ibuprofen and paracetamol, which are commonly used to treat seasickness. A small amount of fluid was found in her lungs. The official cause of death was listed as drowning, but it is possible that she was already oxygen deprived before succumbing to drowning. Tina's diving gear was inspected by the Australian Water Police, but no issues were found. Initially, the police could have dismissed the incident as an accident caused by an inexperienced diver neglecting safety protocols, a sadly common occurrence. However, there were some suspicious aspects to the case, such as the inconclusive autopsy results. Additionally, Watson's unusual behavior, as reported by the diving team, didn't align with the expected actions of a grieving husband. These inconsistencies made it difficult to close the case, leading to a prolonged investigation. Gabe began to suspect that the detectives were investigating him. Furthermore, Tina's parents refused to accept the incident as a tragic accident and sought to hold their son-in-law accountable either for their daughter's death or for failing to assist her. The police observed that the suspect, Gabe, was in a state of shock. He displayed erratic behavior, crying and laughing uncontrollably, and twitching nervously. Gabe requested to call his father and complained of ear pain. He also begged his father to inform his wife's parents about the tragic event. Later that night, Gabe was released from police custody. He proceeded to the yacht owned by the company that had organized the diving trip to the reef. Gabe asked the company for a place to stay for the night, citing that the trip was initially supposed to last 2 days but was cut short due to his wife's death. He also requested a partial refund for the dive, as he never got to see the sunken ship. On October 24th, Gabe's mother arrived in Townsville to support her son and help him find a lawyer. At Gabe's request, they visited the morgue, where he wanted to see his wife one last time. Although Gabe was still considered a suspect, his actions were those of a grieving husband. He cried, held his wife's hand, and begged for her forgiveness, unaware that a police officer was standing outside, recording his actions on a tape recorder. Detective Lawrence questioned Gabe in court about his earlier statement next to Tina at the morgue, "I didn't mean to hurt you." Lawrence sought clarification on what Gabe meant by it. Gabe had been traveling home with his wife's body and had a layover in Oakland. During this time, he sought medical attention for a sore ear and was held for evaluation at the airport. The investigation suggested that Gabe did this to avoid meeting Tina's father. However, it was revealed that ear problems are common among divers, which may have explained Gabe's condition. At Tina's funeral on November 5th, Gabe met with his father-in-law, Watson. In a visible gesture, Gabe removed his wife's wedding ring and placed it on his finger, covering his own ring. He also removed her earrings and handed them to Watson. After this encounter, the Thomas family did not interact with Gabe again that day. Later in the trial, Gabe was questioned about removing his wife's jewelry during her funeral. He simply smiled and shrugged, seemingly unwilling to confirm or deny it. Those who knew Gabe had mixed opinions about his character. Some found him to be kind and amusing, while others considered him cruel and controlling. However, they all agreed that Gabe and his wife, Tina, appeared unhappy together. Tina's friends corroborated what she had shared with her father at a family dinner on February 15th, that she had married Gabe out of fear of being alone and that this decision ultimately led to her demise. Furthermore, one of Tina's friends revealed that Tina had confided in her about being taken to an insurance company by Gabe, where she was forced to purchase a life insurance policy at an inflated rate, naming Gabe as the beneficiary. This account was verified by the insurance agent, who confirmed the details. The cab driver who drove Gabe and Tina to their yacht also testified that Tina had cried throughout the ride, while Gabe ignored her. Another friend of Tina's, Amanda Phillips, came forward with a disturbing story that shed more light on the true nature of Gabe and Tina's relationship. It was revealed that Gabe had secretly recorded Tina using the bathroom, edited the footage, and incorporated it into a Christmas celebration video. That would have been acceptable, but he chose to do it in front of a full house of guests during a general viewing. As everyone tried to explain to him that his actions were in poor taste, he laughed loudly while they gestured in frustration, tapping their fingers against their temples. Although removing jewelry during a funeral may seem like a shocking and condemnatory act by Gabe, a more disturbing incident occurred in 2008. During the trial, the jury was shown footage of Watson visiting Tina's grave, taking all the flowers, and carrying them away. The flowers were later found in a nearby trash can. Tina's father had noticed the missing flowers and set up a hidden camera among the monuments to catch the thief. However, he was shocked to see Gabe on the tape and was outraged by his actions. In court, Gabe claimed that he and his wife had discussed their own death on an extreme honeymoon and that she had requested no flowers on her grave. This excuse sounded strange and unlikely. Gabe claimed that Tina drowned while he attempted to put a mask on her face underwater. However, it was later revealed that this was impossible without an additional air source, which in this case was Tina's oxygen supply. In November 2008, Australian authorities arrested Gabe. His trial began on June 5, 2009, where he pleaded guilty to failing to save his wife. As a result, he was charged with negligent homicide and sentenced to 18 months in prison. Upon completing his sentence, Gabe returned to the U.S. However, a year later, he was charged with first-degree murder by a U.S. court. The prosecution alleged that his motive was to collect insurance payouts following his wife's death. Gabe's lawyer defended him by shifting the blame onto the diving company, claiming that its employees had failed to ensure tourist safety and were now afraid of losing their business due to potential license revocation. Regarding the insurance payout, Gabe received $33,000. However, he spent significantly more on lawyers and additional expert analysis. Despite this, the prosecution maintained that Gabe's expenditure was an attempt to avoid suspicion, as he could not assume he would be believed. The prosecutor also disputed the fact that Gabe, who had a degree in drowning rescue, was unable to save his wife. Gabe addressed the jury, reflecting on the past 7 years since the tragedy. He expressed that he has thought about that terrible day every day, and the public has blamed him, calling him a murderer. Gabe noted that nobody has shown him understanding or empathy, except for his late wife's parents, who he understands will never forgive him. Gabe acknowledged that he can be accused of not doing enough to save his wife, Tina, but he believes he has already been punished for that. He stated that he was afraid to die and wanted to live, which is why he didn't drown with his wife 7 years ago. Gabe emphasized that he still wants to live now. The court found no evidence of Gabe's guilt, and the jury declared him not guilty. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Agnieszka Klavina. Agnieszka Klavina was born on July 8, 1984, in Riga, the capital of Latvia. She was the younger of 2 daughters, with her sister Greta being only a couple of years older. As a result, the 2 sisters were extremely close and friendly. Their parents made every effort to provide their daughters with a good education and support their dreams. Agnieszka developed into a sociable, cheerful, and active individual. She excelled in school, participated in sports, and had many friends. Her future aspirations involved a career in tourism or entertainment, as she loved traveling and organizing leisure activities. With her striking appearance and impressive physique, Agnieszka consistently received attention and compliments from men. From a young age, Agnieszka had numerous admirers vying for her attention. Following her graduation from school, she worked in the service industry while taking language courses and studying tourism management. At the age of 20, Agnieszka relocated from Latvia to the United Kingdom, settling in London. She believed that this move would provide her with greater opportunities to unlock her full potential and showcase her talents. Parents and an older sister were supportive of her decision. After the move, Agnieszka met Michael Mills, an older man with a good education and a thriving business. He owned a small movie theater and entertainment complex, and was considered successful. Agnieszka and Michael quickly hit it off and began dating. Michael showered Agnieszka with expensive gifts, and they traveled together, making plans for their future. They were truly in love and happy, and it seemed like a long and prosperous life awaited them. According to those close to Agnieszka, this was her first true love. She glowed when she was with Michael and dreamed of becoming his wife. In 2014, Agnieszka was offered a 3-month contract as an administrator at a popular nightclub in Marbella, Spain. Although this meant a temporary move, Agnieszka didn't want to pass up the opportunity. Michael couldn't leave his job to go with her, but he didn't oppose her signing the contract. For Agnieszka, it was a chance to gain experience and potentially develop her career in a new field. Marbella is a renowned and appealing resort on the Mediterranean coast, attracting vacationers from worldwide, particularly affluent individuals seeking entertainment and luxury. It's a popular spot for celebrities, athletes, and business moguls. Agnes, being a sociable person, enjoyed working in such a vibrant environment. Before relocating, she visited her family in Latvia and shared the news about her 3-month employment contract. She also announced her plans to marry Michael after returning to England, which delighted her parents and sister. In late May 2014, Agnes moved to Spain with only the essentials, leaving her lover Michael in London. Despite the distance, they maintained daily communication through phone calls and video chats, keeping each other updated on their lives. Agnes Klavina was active on social media, where she shared daily updates about her life through photos, videos, and stories. As a result, she gained a large following of people who were interested in her activities and work. Her posts made it clear that she lived a busy, exciting life and made the most of every day. When her employment contract ended, Agnes decided to extend her stay in Spain for a few more months. It was the start of the peak tourist season in the resort town, and she saw an opportunity to earn a good income. After discussing her plans with her boyfriend, he gave her his support and promised to visit her for a few days. They had been apart for a long time and were eager to see each other. Agnes quickly found a new job as a hostess at an upscale restaurant and renewed her apartment lease. In September, her boyfriend, Michael, visited her as planned. They spent their time together having fun, making plans for their upcoming wedding, and researching honeymoon destinations. However, their time together was short-lived, as Michael returned to London less than a week later. Agnes was left to work in Spain for another month, after which she intended to visit her relatives in Latvia and then join Michael in England. Unfortunately, these plans were not meant to be fulfilled. On September 6th, Agnes went to the Costa del Sol nightclub with her friends. She had told her fiancé about her plans earlier, and he didn't object. At the club, they took pictures and had a good time, with Agnes posting some photos online that night. People who saw her that night remember Agnes wearing a short dress and carrying a small white handbag. As the night ended, Agnes told her friends she wanted to stay a bit longer and would take a taxi home. Her friends weren't worried because Agnes was responsible and hadn't had much to drink. As her friends left, Agnes was talking to a man who had bought her a cocktail. He seemed to be trying to win her over. After that, Agnes disappeared. Despite being in a crowded nightclub, no one saw her leave or knows where she went. The day after Agnes went missing, she failed to show up at work and her phone was turned off. Concerned colleagues and friends alerted the authorities, but the police were slow to act on their missing persons report. As the evening drew in, Michael, Agnes's worried fiancé, contacted her mother, explaining that he had been unable to reach Agnes all day, which was unprecedented. The following day, Agnes's parents and fiancé attempted to file a missing persons report with the Spanish police. However, they were informed that the report would only be considered if it was made in person. Consequently, Agnes's family and Michael flew to Marbella and filed the report 5 days after her disappearance. The investigation began with a search of Agnes's rented apartment. The property appeared as if Agnes had simply stepped out for a short time, with her belongings, including documents, money, and valuable jewelry, still intact. The fridge was stocked with prepared food, and several outfits were laid out on the bed, suggesting that Agnes had chosen what to wear to the club on her last night out. It was clear that Agnes had not returned to her apartment since leaving with her friends. Agnes's phone was switched off, and she stopped posting on social media. She also wasn't responding to any messages. At this point, the police started investigating her disappearance, but a significant amount of time had already passed. Her friends and family created flyers with her picture and distributed them across the city, asking for help in finding her. The media soon picked up the story, and Agnes's disappearance was featured on TV news and the front pages of local newspapers. The investigation advanced after police analyzed CCTV footage from inside and outside the entertainment venue. Although the files had been deleted, specialists were able to recover them. A parking lot exit camera recording showed Agnes being led out of the club around 6 a.m. by a man, apparently against her will. A closer examination of this footage, the last to show Agnes alive, revealed more disturbing details. A man of large build was leading Agnes, gripping her tightly around the waist. Agnes appeared frightened, attempting to break free several times and speaking emotionally. Despite her struggles, the man persisted, eventually forcing her into a Mercedes A63 with tinted windows in the parking lot. At the moment the large man pushed Agnes into the cabin, another man was already inside, while the first man went to the driver's seat. Agnes managed to open the door and tried to escape, but the doorman, standing next to her, intervened. The driver gestured and spoke, and the doorman pushed Agnes back into the car. The driver then handed the doorman something, likely a cash reward. About 6 minutes after Agnes entered the car, her phone was turned off and never turned back on. The vehicle's movement couldn't be tracked due to a lack of CCTV cameras. It became clear that the men in the cabin were the last to contact Agnes. The case was shrouded in secrecy from the start, with investigators signing non-disclosure agreements and information withheld from the press and Agnes's loved ones. 6 months after the incident, Agnes's relatives were shown footage from the club's cameras, which revealed the identities of the 3 men who had last been in contact with Agnes. The large man who forcibly removed her from the club and pushed her into a car was identified as Wesley Capper, the son of a wealthy and influential British millionaire. Also in the car were Craig Porter, a longtime friend of Capper's with no fixed occupation and a history of police attention, and Sean Usman, a dark-skinned doorman. During interrogation, Porter and Usman both claimed they were innocent, stating that Agnes had entered the car voluntarily. Capper's account was that he and a friend had spotted Agnes, a beautiful blonde, at the club and approached her to strike up a conversation. According to Capper, Agnes was already intoxicated, which contradicts the testimony of her friends. However, when offered a drink, she did not refuse. Capper then suggested continuing the party at his luxurious country house, and Agnes allegedly agreed. Agnes reportedly changed her mind about attending a private party at Wesley's house while already in the car. She asked to be dropped off on a dark stretch of road, saying she would take a taxi home. According to the driver, he dropped her off at the requested location, which had no streetlights or CCTV cameras. However, Craig Porter, another passenger, couldn't confirm or deny this account because he was also heavily intoxicated and didn't recall when Agnes was in the car. Craig claimed he fell asleep shortly after leaving the parking lot and didn't notice Agnes's departure. Sean Usman, the doorman, stated that Agnes was drunk but couldn't say if she entered the car voluntarily. He did confirm that when the car stopped, the blonde woman opened the door and almost fell out. Then, at the driver's request, the doorman slammed the car door shut, burning a substantial tip. When questioned, Usman said he didn't believe Agnes was trying to escape by jumping out of the car while it was moving. He thought she might have accidentally opened the door due to intoxication. He also mentioned that Agnes didn't scream or ask for help. However, footage showed Wesley Capper firmly holding Agnes by the waist and wrist, leading her to the car. Wesley claimed Agnes was dizzy, and he was supporting her to prevent her from falling. Later, investigators discovered another suspicious video taken at Soto Grande in southern Spain's Puerta de la Duquesa port. The video, dated September 10th, 4 days after Agnes's disappearance, showed Wesley, Craig, and 2 other men boarding John Capper's luxury yacht. They were carrying a large, heavy-looking suitcase and a rolled-up carpet. When the company returned to Puerta de la Duquesa port a few days later, they had no luggage. After watching the footage, Capper claimed that he and his friends sailed to Ibiza for fun. According to him, the suitcase contained their belongings, and what investigators thought was a carpet was actually bedding. However, he couldn't explain what happened to it afterward. A thorough search of Wesley's yacht and car yielded nothing, as both had been thoroughly cleaned and dry cleaned, eliminating any DNA evidence. Although a long blonde hair was found in a car's trunk, its origin couldn't be determined because the crucial evidence mysteriously disappeared during the investigation. At the trial, the prosecution revealed another peculiar detail. A few hours after Agnes was in the defendant's car, Capper made multiple calls to emergency services but hung up each time without waiting for an answer, as if he was afraid or unsure of his actions. Capper explained that he was drunk and made the calls randomly. The Clavin family's lawyer believed Agnes had been dead for some time, with her body likely on the seabed in the suitcase brought onto the yacht by the suspects. He also thought the case was intentionally delayed, allowing the suspects to eliminate any incriminating evidence. A year and a half after Agnes vanished, Capper, Porter, and Usman were in court, accused of holding her against her will and forcing her into a car. However, due to insufficient evidence, no additional charges could be brought. They were granted bail and discreetly left the courtroom. Agnes's family was understandably outraged, but the judge stood firm. It wasn't until 2019, nearly 5 years after Agnes's disappearance, that the three men were retried. They maintained their innocence, claiming Agnes had entered the car voluntarily. The prosecutor requested that the doorman, Usman, be considered an accomplice to the crime because he assisted the defendants in driving the victim, Agnes, away from the scene. This charge carried a potential 5-year prison sentence for Usman. In his defense, Usman delivered a passionate speech, claiming he was being targeted due to his skin color and inability to afford a good lawyer, as he sent all his earnings to support his impoverished family in Africa. In contrast, the lawyers for Capper and Porter argued that their clients were only guilty of convincing Agnes to get into the car, not of forcing her to do so. According to their version of events, Agnes was dropped off on the road at her request and was waiting for a cab to go home. They suggested that, while intoxicated and unable to defend herself, Agnes might have been kidnapped and killed by someone else. The judge's verdict shocked and outraged the family of the missing young woman because none of the defendants received significant punishment. Usman was acquitted of all charges, while Capper received a 2-year sentence for taking advantage of Agnes's intoxication to persuade her to get into his car. Porter was sentenced to 6 months for his role in the incident. However, both men received suspended sentences and did not serve any time in prison. Instead, they paid Agnes's family a compensation of 101,000 sterling, which was seen as a paltry sum. Agnes's family was disappointed with the outcome and appealed the decision. It was later revealed that both defendants had broken the law again while awaiting the court's decision. Capper, who was under the influence of alcohol and drugs, hit and killed a woman with his car and fled the scene. Porter and his friend, also intoxicated, stole a car after assaulting its owner. Despite the severity of these new crimes, Capper was only sentenced to probation thanks to his lawyer's effective defense. He paid a substantial amount in compensation to the family of the woman he killed but remained free. Porter was less fortunate this time and did go to jail. In 2021, nearly 7 years after Agnes's disappearance, the main suspect faced punishment. Wesley had spent years living a self-destructive lifestyle, excessively consuming alcohol and illicit substances, which severely impacted his health. He was hospitalized and, after seeming to recover, suddenly suffered a stroke. Capper passed away on July 26, 2021, at the age of 44. Around this time, Agnes's parents submitted another appeal to the court. However, since the suspect was now deceased, prosecution was no longer possible. Despite the Supreme Court's pending decision in this complex case, an unexpected development occurred 9 years later. Although Agnes Klavina's body was never found, she was presumed dead. Later, her family, including her parents, sister, and fiancé, accepted their lawyer's theory that the perpetrators had disposed of Agnieszka's body in a suitcase, which was then loaded onto a yacht and discarded at sea, making it impossible to recover. Nevertheless, in the summer of 2023, 9 years after Agnieszka vanished, the case took a surprising turn. In mid-June, a gardener at the elite Lida Golf Club in Costa del Sol discovered a mysterious object while cleaning near the coast. Upon closer inspection, it was an old, damaged suitcase. The gardener did not open it and instead called the police. Authorities found human remains inside the suitcase, later identified as belonging to a young woman aged 25 to 35 at the time of death. Further investigation revealed that the suitcase had been in the water for around 10 years before washing the shore. Based on this information, police suspected that the remains might belong to Agnieszka Klavina, who went missing 9 years ago. To confirm this, experts are currently conducting DNA tests to compare Agnieszka's DNA with the remains found. The investigation is ongoing, and details have not been made public. If the suspicions are confirmed, the case will be reopened, and surviving suspects will face trial. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Kaler family. James Craig Kaler was born in 1963 in Weatherford, Texas. Karen Kaler White, his future wife, was born in the same city 2 years later, in 1965. They met while attending a Texas university in the early 1980s. At the time, Craig was a graduating engineering student, and Karen was a freshman studying humanities. They quickly discovered common interests and started a romantic relationship. Young and in love, they appeared to be the ideal couple, with Craig standing out as a top student due to his exceptional determination and engineering talent. After graduating in the late 1980s, they had a modest wedding with only close friends and family in attendance. They welcomed their first child, Emily, in 1991, and their second child, Lauren, in 1993. The family lived in a cozy house in Weatherford and enjoyed a comfortable lifestyle by local standards. In 1999, while Karen was pregnant with their third child, Craig received a lucrative job offer from a large utility company in Weatherford. His promotion coincided with the birth of their son, Sean, whom he cherished. Craig purchased a large house in a highly respected neighborhood in the city, along with a dependable car for his family. He became the main provider for the family, while Karen stayed at home. On the surface, the family appeared to be flawless. Their daughters, Emily and Lauren, were gifted in sports and music, frequently taking part in singing competitions and local activities. Emily was an outstanding student who went on to attend a prestigious pharmacy college, whereas Lauren, also an excellent student, aspired to enroll in a conservatory to pursue a music career. Their son, Sean, was a friendly, curious boy with a passion for mathematics and a dream of becoming an archaeologist. He had a close relationship with his parents and sisters. Craig supported the family financially, while Karen ensured the home was welcoming, took care of the children, and enjoyed baking. They was actively involved in community work, aiming to enhance their neighborhood, and had raised 3 gifted and wonderful children. However, despite their seemingly perfect life, the family was hiding numerous issues. In 2007, Karen confided in her younger sister, Linda, revealing that she was on the brink of a nervous breakdown. Karen expressed her distress over Craig's controlling behavior, which had been ongoing for years and was escalating. Craig insisted on a detailed record of every single expense, no matter how small, including daily household costs. Karen had to provide him with receipts from the supermarket, bank statements, and even report her daily activities while he was at work. The entire family was bound to a strict schedule set by Craig, dictating when they had to be home, sleep, wake up, eat, and even when they could be intimate. As time passed, Craig's need for control grew stronger. He became increasingly demanding and selfish, scheduling Karen's every move down to the hour. Karen felt trapped, with no personal time, only duties and responsibilities. She tried to meet all of Craig's demands, hoping he would eventually ease up and they could return to their previous life. However, Craig seemed to take pleasure in his control and showed no willingness to change. Linda was deeply disturbed by what her sister shared, having, like everyone else, perceived Craig as the ideal husband and family man, only to discover he was a tyrant at home. Despite this, Karen didn't want to break up her family and was financially dependent on Craig, along with their children. So, she decided to look for a job that could provide a stable income. Karen, a mother of 3, had maintained a remarkable physical shape despite her advanced age. She prioritized good nutrition, occasional dieting, self-care, and daily jogging. Unbeknownst to her husband Craig, Karen joined a local fitness club, where she spent several hours each day working out. This newfound hobby allowed her to relieve stress, find distraction, and clarify her thoughts. As Craig was at work, he remained unaware of her fitness routine. The fitness club management soon took notice of Karen, an attractive, fit, and dedicated individual. They offered her a trial opportunity to become a fitness instructor with the potential for a formal employment contract. Karen, a former stay-at-home wife, was thrilled by this unexpected chance to turn her passion into a paid career. When Craig eventually discovered Karen's secret, she anticipated a negative reaction, guess him to prohibit her from continuing. However, he responded calmly and seemed pleased that his wife had found a fulfilling activity that also earned her an income. Karen's husband had 3 conditions for their new arrangement. She had to be home when he arrived, cook meals, and maintain their intimate life. Karen agreed, as this gave her the freedom to manage her daily life and finances without needing to justify every expense to her husband. At the fitness club where she worked, Karen met Sunny Reese, a new instructor. They quickly became friends, and for Karen, who had been a stay-at-home mom for years, Sunny became a trusted confidant. As their friendship grew, Karen and Sunny spent more time together, going for walks, drinking coffee, and having in-depth conversations. Their friendship eventually evolved into something more, but they kept their relationship a secret. Karen knew she had to confess to her husband but struggled to find the right words and worried about the consequences. After months of preparation, she finally opened up to Craig. Although Craig was initially perplexed by his wife's confession, he remained calm and composed. The next day, he revealed that he was open to his wife's relationship with Sunny, but only if he could be a part of it. This proposal left Karen stunned and unsure of how to respond. Craig, however, took the lead and started wooing Sunny, showering her with flowers and small gifts. To him, this seemed like a chance to spice up his intimate life and bring passion back into his marriage to Karen. Initially, the 2 women agreed to Craig's proposal, but it didn't take long for them to realize that he was trying to assert his dominance. Their unusual love triangle was short-lived, and Craig was eventually told that he was no longer welcome in their relationship. Feeling offended, Craig ordered Karen to end the affair immediately, but she continued to see Sunny, having genuinely fallen in love. After nearly 2 decades of marriage, it appeared that Karen was willing to leave her husband for a new relationship. Craig relocated his family to Columbia, Missouri. He became the water director, hoping the move would end his wife's affair with Sunny and restore normal family life. The 2008 move proved challenging. The children adapted to new schools and made friends, while Craig thought he'd severed ties between Karen and Sunny. However, Karen and Sunny continued to secretly communicate through phone calls, texts, and meetings. Karen and Sunny would meet halfway at a roadside hotel, spending a couple of hours together before returning home. By this time, Karen was aware her marriage was failing. She no longer loved her husband, and it was only a matter of time before they divorced. These secret meetings continued until December 2008. On New Year's Eve, the Kaler family visited their hometown to see family and friends. Sonny was also at the party. Initially, Karen and Sonny kept a low profile, just exchanging greetings. However, as the party went on and they drank more, they became less concerned about what others thought. They were inseparable, holding hands, exchanging romantic glances, and were even seen kissing by some guests. Craig was furious, feeling insulted and humiliated by Karen's public display of her affair in front of dozens of friends, former roommates, and co-workers. He verbally attacked Karen and Sonny at the party, then forcibly dragged Karen away. On the way home, Craig lost control, grabbing Karen by the shoulders and shaking her violently, ripping her dress. He then slapped her, causing her to stumble and fall, hitting her head hard. Harassment continued after they returned home, and the conflict didn't subside. Karen told Craig a few days later that she was leaving him and started divorce proceedings, asking for custody of the children. Initially, Craig apologized and begged her to stay for the children's sake, suggesting they give their marriage another try. However, Karen was resolute and got a divorce. Craig then called their mutual friends and relatives, asking them to persuade Karen to stay with him and not break up the family. She informed him that she was ending their marriage to be with Sonny, admitting that she had never found true happiness with him. In early spring 2009, Craig and Karen got into another argument while still living together. This time, Craig became physically violent, prompting Karen to report him to the police, resulting in his arrest. However, Craig downplayed the incident at the police station, claiming he only restrained Karen to calm her down, which caused her bruises. Following this incident, Karen took the children and moved out without waiting for their divorce to be finalized. Craig was devastated and angry, especially when he found out his daughters, Emily and Lauren, sided with their mother, saying they had finally seen her happy after a long time. Craig felt betrayed and refused to communicate with his daughters, only spending time with his son Sean on weekends. Meanwhile, Craig held on to the hope that Karen would change her mind and return to him. His jealousy led him to try to control her, following her everywhere, watching her house, and even attempting to install a hidden camera. His obsessive behavior negatively impacted his job performance, resulting in him eventually missing work without a valid reason, which ultimately led to him being fired. After losing his job and income, Craig was forced to move in with his parents. With plenty of free time, he began stalking his ex-wife, Karen. In November 2009, just before Thanksgiving, Karen took her children to visit her 89-year-old grandmother, Dorothy White, in the small town of Burlingame, Kansas. On the evening of November 29th, the Burlingame Police Department received a call about a suspicious van and gunshots. Dorothy's neighbors reported seeing a small truck pull up to her house, and a man got out and entered the house. They heard screams and gunshots, but didn't intervene, fearing the man was armed. The man quickly left the house and drove away. When police arrived, they found a terrified 10-year-old boy, Sean Kaler, calling for help. He couldn't explain what happened, but police soon discovered a horrific scene. Inside the house, near the front door, they found Dorothy lying in a pool of blood, surprisingly alive despite 2 gunshot wounds. In the kitchen, police discovered 44-year-old Karen's body. She had been shot in the chest and then fatally shot in the head at close range by her ex-husband, leaving her no chance of survival. Nearby, between a wall and a couch, lay the body of Karen's 18-year-old daughter, Emily. Emily had attempted to hide from her enraged father but was found and killed with 2 point-blank shots. Upstairs, in a second-floor bedroom, Emily's younger sister Lauren was found in a pool of blood, still alive. Lauren fatally begged for her life, repeatedly stating that her father was responsible for the attack. Lauren and her great-grandmother were immediately rushed to the intensive care unit of a nearby hospital. Unfortunately, despite medical efforts, neither survived. Lauren died on December 1 due to massive blood loss and internal organ damage, while her great-grandmother passed away a few hours later. The only person who survived, Sean, was in shock. Psychologists helped him deal with the trauma he experienced, and since he was the only one who saw what happened at his great-grandmother's house, he needed to be questioned carefully. That evening, Sean's mother was preparing dinner in the kitchen when he approached her to ask for his favorite pies. Suddenly, the back door swung open and his father, Craig, entered with a shotgun. Without a word, Craig pointed the gun at his ex-wife and shot her, then fired again at closer range. Sean was initially frozen in horror, but when his father turned to him and stared silently, he realized he had to escape. He jumped out the open back door and ran towards the main entrance, hoping to alert his grandmother, sisters, and get help. However, upon reaching the threshold, Sean heard more gunshots and, fearing for his safety, hid in a nearby outbuilding. He heard additional shots and waited in terror. Craig was immediately added to the wanted list, with a warning that he was armed and extremely dangerous. The police received reports of a speeding truck, which helped them quickly determine the direction Craig was heading. At one point, Craig abandoned his vehicle in a wooded area and began walking down a deserted road. Law enforcement caught up with Craig the next morning and arrested him without resistance. In the vehicle, they found a rifle, ammunition, and medication for depression and anxiety next to the driver's seat. Craig appeared confused and frightened, admitting to being armed but stating he had no intention of using the weapons. At the police station, Craig initially confessed to his crimes and openly shared his story with the investigating officer. He explained how his wife's infidelity with Sonny and their public humiliation of him had led to his downward spiral. He shared how his efforts to save his marriage resulted in job loss and further erosion of his self-respect. Overcome with emotion, Craig expressed regret and a sense of betrayal by those closest to him, including his daughters. Craig's trial started in December 2010. His lawyer, Thomas Heaney, advised him to recant his initial confession and blame his actions on mental illness and insanity. This was Craig's only way to avoid the death penalty for the murder of 4 people. Heaney argued that Craig's mental state was severely impacted after his wife left him for someone else, his children sided with their mother, he lost his job, and had to move back into his parents' home. According to Heaney, these factors led to Craig's breakdown, causing him to commit the crime while insane and unaware of his actions. However, prior to 1995, a law in Kansas allowed for leniency if a defendant pleaded insanity, but this law was repealed. The prosecution found no evidence of insanity in Craig's actions, only deliberate planning. Craig bought guns and ammunition beforehand, went to the house where his family was, shot each victim twice to ensure no chance of survival, but intentionally let his son Sean escape. In August 2011, Craig was convicted of all charges and received a death sentence. At the final hearing, 12-year-old Sean testified, stating he didn't want his father to die because he was his only remaining close relative. Despite numerous appeals, the verdict remained unchanged. Today, Mr. Kaler is still imprisoned, fighting to have his case reviewed and the death sentence overturned. Following the death of his mother and sisters, Sean is now an adult, having completed his education, and has chosen to stay and work in his home state. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Lori Vallow. Lori Vallow was born on June 26, 1973, in Loma Linda, California. She grew up in a large family with 2 older brothers and 3 sisters. Her parents, Denise and Barry Cox, worked hard to provide for their children. Lori was especially close to her brother Alex, who always looked out for her and protected her, even during her school years. As she grew older, Lori became a beautiful and charismatic young woman with many admirers. She was a blonde with a slender figure and a captivating smile. She enjoyed being the center of attention and was a spirited and adventurous person. In the spring of 1992, at the age of 18, Lori married her high school sweetheart, Nelson Yanes. However, the young couple soon realized they had rushed into marriage and were not ready for family life. As a result, their marriage ended in less than a year. They did not have any children together. In the fall of 1995, Lori remarried, this time to a man named William Leah. A year later, they had a son named Colby. However, their marriage ended in 1998, just 2 years later. Lori retained custody of her son. In 2001, Lori married Joseph Anthony Ryan, who adopted her son from a previous marriage the following year. They also had a daughter, Tylee. However, this marriage ended in 2005. Shortly after, Joseph visited their children and got into an altercation with Lori's brother, Alex. Alex claimed he was defending Lori's honor, as Joseph had insulted her. As a result, Lori was fined and received a short prison sentence. After her divorce, Lori met Charles Anthony Vallow and married him in February 2006. Charles was 17 years older than Lori, but this significant age difference didn't pose a problem for they. Charles had 2 teenage sons, Zachary and Nicholas, from previous relationships. The family initially lived in Nevada, where Lori's children from previous marriages resided, while Charles's sons visited during holidays or weekends. Charles owned a small business that provided a stable income to support the family. Lori did not work, but Charles never criticized her for it. In 2014, they officially adopted Charles's grandnephew, Joshua Jackson Vallow, also known as JJ, who had autism. The family was able to provide JJ with the expensive therapy he needed. By the end of 2014, the family decided to move to the Hawaiian Islands. By this time, Colby and Charles's older children were living on their own, so the Vallow family moved to the island with just the 4 of them, Lori, Charles, Tylee, and JJ. They settled in a popular tourist area and decided to open a beach bar, specializing in fresh juices, smoothies, and non-alcoholic cocktails. Despite their efforts and Charles's experience in trade, the business struggled to compete and ultimately failed. Around this time, Lori developed an interest in spiritual literature and became particularly drawn to a series of books called Standing in Holy Places by Chad Daybell. She was deeply captivated by his views and ideas, becoming almost obsessed with his writings, and began reading his books daily. In 2016, Lori Vallow and her family were forced to leave Hawaii and relocate to the mainland, eventually settling in Arizona. While her husband Charles worked hard to provide for the family, Lori became increasingly obsessed with her faith, drifting away from reality. 2 years later, in October 2018, Lori and her friend Melanie attended a seminar called Preparing People for the Second Coming of Christ in a nearby town, led by Chad Daybell. Lori was a huge fan of Daybell and was thrilled to meet him in person. She sat in the front row, captivated by his words, and caught his attention. After the event, Daybell engaged with his followers, and Lori stayed behind to talk to him. She was drawn to him and asked if she could touch his hand. Daybell, looking into her eyes, told her that they had been husband and wife in 7 past lives. Chad and Lori started communicating regularly a few weeks after exchanging contact information. When Lori's husband traveled to Nevada for work, Lori invited Chad to host a gathering at her home, which drew around a dozen people. They discussed God and the Judgment Day. Lori and Chad began working together to prepare people for what they believed would be a catastrophic judgment. They started producing podcasts, leading sermons, and writing articles on the topic. As Lori became more engrossed in her newfound faith, she began to detach from reality and her family. Charles didn't immediately realize the full extent of the change, believing it to be a passing phase that would soon go away. However, By the time Charles realized the severity of the situation, it was too late. Lori's beliefs became increasingly extreme, and she started talking about battling dark spirits and zombies. She claimed that God had chosen her for a special mission to destroy these evil entities. Charles's efforts to bring his wife back to reality were unsuccessful, and she started to view him as a malevolent entity that needed to be eliminated. By the end of 2018, the marriage between Lori and Charles was on the verge of collapse. In February 2019, while Charles was away on a week-long business trip, Lori changed the locks on their shared home. When Charles returned, he found himself locked out of his own house, his personal car and family truck were missing, and a significant amount of $35,000 had been withdrawn from his account. Charles tried to enter the house, calling out for his wife, but Lori, in a frantic state, rushed outside, shouting threats and curses. She claimed that her husband's soul had long been dead, and his body was possessed by a demon, repeatedly saying, "I don't know who you are and what you've done with my husband." Charles immediately went to the police station to report Lori for stealing from him, blocking access to his home and children, and threatening him with physical harm. As a result, a protective order was issued, which prohibited Lori from approaching him. During the police interview, Charles expressed concerns about Lori's extreme religious behavior, her claims that the world was ending soon, and her tendency to label people as either good or evil. Although the officers seemed skeptical and even made fun of Charles, they still issued the protective order. The next day, Charles filed for divorce and changed the beneficiary of his $1 million life insurance policy from Lori to his mother and sister. According to his lawyer, Charles was worried about the well-being of his son JJ, who needed special care. He trusted that his mother and sister would manage the insurance payout responsibly and take care of JJ if anything happened to him. Months later, in an attempt to reconcile with his wife Lori and salvage their marriage, Charles made a critical error. He dropped the restraining order that had been protecting him. As a result, Charles began visiting Lori at her home, driven by a desire to reconnect with his children and revive his relationship. Tragically, on July 11, 2019, Charles's bid at reconciliation ended in disaster. When he arrived at the house, he was shot twice in the chest and killed. Lori's brother, Alex, admitted to the shooting and called 911. He claimed he acted in self-defense, alleging that Charles had attacked him first with a baseball bat. According to Alex, he responded by firing his pistol twice without taking aim. Witnesses to the shooting included the homeowner and the children. Although their testimonies were slightly inconsistent, the court ultimately ruled Charles's death an unintentional killing in self-defense. It's worth noting that Alex sustained only minor injuries. On the same day Charles's body was taken to the morgue, Lori hosted a party at their house, complete with music, numerous guests, and a poolside disco in the exact spot where her husband had been shot, with visible bloodstains still present. Strangely, she made no arrangements for his funeral and didn't inform anyone about his death. It wasn't until a week later, when Charles's unclaimed body remained in the morgue, that his sons, mother, sister, and other relatives learned of his passing. Lori's life took a dramatic turn after her husband's death. She sold their home in Arizona and moved to Rexburg, Idaho, with her children. They settled in the same housing complex as her brother Alex Cox and his wife, Tammy. Lori enrolled her son in a special needs school, but her 16-year-old daughter, Tylee, did not attend any school. As a result, many neighbors were unaware that Lori even had a second child, as Tylee was rarely seen outside. Around the same time, Lori made a disturbing comment about her daughter, referring to her as a dark entity in a phone conversation with a friend. On September 8, 2019, Lori, her children, and her brother Alex went on a trip to Yellowstone Park, where they met up with Chad. Several photos from the trip show Tylee, but after that day, she was never seen again. 2 weeks later, on September 24, 2019, Lori withdrew her son's documents from the special needs school, claiming she would homeschool him. Chad's 49-year-old wife, Tammy, died suddenly on October 19, less than a month after her husband's affair with Lori began. According to Chad, Tammy had been suffering from a cold and cough, and it was presumed that she died from respiratory failure in her sleep. There were no signs of violence on her body, and her death was ruled natural. However, Chad refused to allow an autopsy to determine the cause of death, a decision that raised no suspicions at the time. Following Tammy's passing, Chad received approximately $500,000 in insurance payouts. 2 weeks after Tammy's death, Chad and Lori traveled to the Hawaiian Islands, where they got married in a beachside ceremony. This news came as a shock to Chad's children, who were still grieving the loss of their mother and struggled to understand their father's actions. After returning to Arizona, they lived together and misled others by claiming that Lori's children were staying with relatives or that she didn't have any children at all. They also rented a storage unit and moved the children's belongings there, essentially erasing them from their home. On December 12, 2019, approximately 1 month later, Alex unexpectedly died at his home, appearing to have suffered a heart attack. At his family's request, no autopsy was performed, and his death was attributed to natural causes. As time went on, more and more people began inquiring about the whereabouts of Lori's children. She skillfully deceived her neighbors and acquaintances with lies, but it was more challenging to convince her relatives. Colby, Lori's eldest son, who had lost touch with his mother after moving away, made an effort to reconnect with his younger sister. However, Lori initially pretended to be her daughter, Tylee, when Colby contacted her. He soon became suspicious that something was amiss. Meanwhile, Charles Vallo's relatives were concerned about the welfare of his grandchild, JJ, and repeatedly requested to visit or contact him. Lori consistently denied or made up excuses to prevent them from seeing the boy. The situation escalated when JJ's grandmother reported his disappearance to the police. Colby also approached the authorities to help locate his younger sister. When police officers visited Lori's home to speak with the children, she lied about their whereabouts, claiming they were visiting relatives. After this information proved false, the police gave Lori an ultimatum. She had a week to appear at the police station with the children. Instead, she and her husband fled to Hawaii. On February 20, 2020, Lori was arrested on the island of Kauai and taken back to Arizona. A search of Lori in Chad's home was conducted, but no signs of the missing children, Tylee and JJ, were found. Initially, Chad had defended Lori, claiming she didn't have any children, but now he was also under suspicion. It wasn't until June 9 that police discovered human remains buried in their backyard. Forensic analysis confirmed that the bodies were those of Ty and JJ. Further investigation led to the exhumation of the bodies of Tammy Daybell and Alex Cox to determine the true causes of their deaths. Toxicology reports revealed the presence of chemicals that could induce heart failure, suggesting that their deaths were not natural. Lori and Chad's trial began in January 2021. They faced charges of conspiracy, first-degree criminal acts, grand theft, deceit, and insurance fraud. Additionally, the circumstances surrounding Charles Vallo's death were reclassified from self-defense to premeditated murder. In court, witnesses testified that Lori referred to her children as dark entities and claimed she wanted to save their souls. There were allegations that the deaths of Tylee and JJ may have been ritualistic in nature. Notably, Tylee's body was partially burned, and Chad had previously sent Lori an email categorizing people, including Tylee, as having dark spirits. Lori and her husband, Chad, were both facing the possibility of capital punishment due to the severity of the charges against them. However, in May 2021, Lori's defense team successfully argued that she was incompetent to stand trial, bringing the proceedings to a halt. Meanwhile, all 5 of Chad's adult children maintained that their father was innocent and had been framed by Lori and her co-conspirator. After receiving treatment at a psychiatric facility, Lori was deemed fit to stand trial again in 2022. In March 2023, the judge ruled that capital punishment would not be an option for Lori, a decision that the prosecution is still trying to appeal. Lori was ultimately sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole in July 2023. Chad's trial is ongoing, and he still faces the possibility of capital punishment. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Nathan Pete. Nathan Pete was born on February 12, 1982, in Tamuning, a village on the island of Guam, in the Pacific Ocean. Nathan was part of a big, loving family with 3 brothers, Matthew, Anthony, and Eric, and a sister named Carmela. His family was close-knit, with all the children being helpful and supportive of their parents. Nathan was an exemplary child who rarely got into trouble, demonstrating care and kindness at home and being diligent in his studies at school. His sociable nature made him easy to get along with, and he had many friends. Nathan grew up near the ocean and developed a passion for swimming and surfing from a young age. He spent most of his free time at the beach, soaking up the sun and enjoying life. It was during his time at South High School that he met his future wife, Michelle and Aunt Chuck. They were immediately drawn to each other and began spending all their time together, studying, preparing for classes, and helping with household chores. As they grew closer, their friendship blossomed into romance. Tragedy struck Michelle's family when she was 16, as her mother passed away. Michelle took on a maternal role, caring for her younger sister Melissa and managing the household. Nathan was supportive and helpful throughout this difficult time, assisting with childcare and other responsibilities. After graduating in 2000, Nathan proposed to Michelle, and she happily accepted. Due to financial constraints, they decided to forego a traditional wedding and instead moved in together with the blessing of their parents to start building a life together. Nathan got a job as a receptionist at a local hotel, earning a decent income. Like many young people, he and his partner Michelle were ambitious and had big plans for their future. They wanted their own home and independence. When their son Dion was born, Nathan's income was no longer enough to cover their expenses. To provide a better life for his family, Nathan decided to join the Air Force. After completing his training, Nathan was assigned to Elmendorf Air Base in Anchorage, Alaska. Although Michelle was left to care for their baby alone, the family's financial situation improved. Eventually, they were able to build their own home, where their second child, a daughter named Niara, was born. Nathan's military career took off, and he was able to provide for his family's needs. 6 years after getting engaged, Nathan and Michelle finally had a big wedding, achieving their long-held dreams. In 2006, Nathan was transferred to the Davis-Monthan military base in Arizona, where he was promoted to lead a team responsible for loading weapons onto a 10 Thunderbolt attack aircraft. He also received training in logistics and material management. Nathan was dedicated to his job and performed it with the best intentions, truly serving his country. A coworker described Nathan as a hard worker. In 2007, Nathan and his family relocated to Nellis Air Base near Las Vegas, Nevada. There, he took on a new role as a junior officer in charge of the supply section for combat aircraft maintenance. As Nathan's career grew, so did his family. He and his wife, Michelle, had 2 more sons, Drawn and David. Because Michelle fell in love with Las Vegas, and Nathan wanted to make her happy, so he chose a house in Las Vegas that's spacious and bright house perfect for their large family. Initially, Michelle was overjoyed with the surprise, but as time passed, their expenses began to exceed Nathan's earnings, causing their financial happiness to dwindle. Financial struggles strained Nathan and Michelle's relationship. To improve their situation, Nathan enlisted in the military, despite the US being at war with Iraq. His 6-month deployment led to significant financial improvements, bringing him a sense of satisfaction. After a brief rest, Pete returned to Iraq, leaving Michelle to care for their 4 children. The weight of this responsibility, combined with Nathan's prolonged absences, took a toll on Michelle's mental health. She became anxious about being alone and struggled to cope with a reduced standard of living. To alleviate her worries, Michelle started working at a corporate credit card telemarketing firm and attended an aesthetics school to develop her skills. However, when Nathan left for Iraq again, Michelle felt isolated and disenchanted. Her relationship with Nathan was strained, and she turned to a colleague, Michael Rudolph Rodriguez, a charismatic but untrustworthy individual with a questionable past. By the end of 2009, Nathan returned home, and it seemed that the time apart had affected his family relationships. Michelle had been leading a double life, and her intentions were not entirely pure. She had developed feelings for someone else, but she didn't want to lose her husband. To keep him, she tried to please him in every way, changing her appearance and behavior. Nathan was fascinated by the changes in Michelle, but he didn't suspect that something was amiss. He was happy to be back with his family and decided to stay for a while. The children had struggled in school without their father, and Nathan was determined to make up for lost time. To earn extra money, Nathan started working night shifts in Las Vegas and also began teaching baseball to young children privately. He developed a simplified training program that was well received. However, as the family's standard of living declined, Michelle's attitude towards Nathan changed. By Thanksgiving 2010, the tension was palpable. When Nathan's brother Eric and his wife Veronica visited, they were shocked by the change in they, sensing the strain between Nathan and Michelle. It appeared that Michelle and Nathan's feelings for each other had diminished significantly. They was having trouble concealing their personal and financial struggles from others. In fact, their pantry and refrigerator were nearly bare. A conversation between Michelle and Michael occurred on December 1, 2010, in a sequence of events that seemed unusual. At 11:12 p.m., Michael sent Michelle a text message, inquiring about her well-being and mentioning that they were nearing completion of the Van Dyke contract, which was due the following day. 2 minutes later, Michael sent a follow-up message, offering Michelle a chance to take a couple of days off to rest if she was still not feeling well. He emphasized that her contributions were highly valued. Michelle responded to Michael's messages at 11:19 p.m. She mentioned that her husband had just awakened her, informing her that he would be late that day, although she was unsure about the specifics. A few months before the tragedy, Michelle was not hesitant to leave her husband Nathan. She believed that a divorce would only lead to financial struggles and emotional distress. She also doubted that Nathan would forgive her and provide sufficient alimony to support a normal life. However, Michelle was aware of Nathan's military insurance policy, which would pay out approximately $650,000 in the event of his death. This thing weighed heavily on her mind. Michelle shared her troubled thoughts with Michael, who was intrigued. They hatched a sinister plan to kill Nathan, with Michael invited Corey, a friend with a history of theft and fraud, for a $20,000 reward. Corey's girlfriend Jessica and her friend Shannon joined in, with Shannon promised a 5% profit. The original plan was to kill Nathan in a parking lot. Jessica bought supplies, including gloves and cologne. Shannon provided an alibi for Michael. However, Michelle's early return home on December 1, 2010, changed the plan. She usually arrived home around 10:40 p.m., but came home early and spent the evening with Nathan, unaware of the tragic events that would soon unfold. Nathan was running late for work, so he rushed downstairs just as Michelle was communicating with Michael. To avoid arousing suspicion, Michelle used coded messages. Unbeknownst to Nathan, Michael was parked in a black Cadillac SRX in front of the house, wearing latex gloves to prevent leaving any evidence. Michael realized that Nathan's military training made him a formidable opponent, so he decided to take him by surprise. Approaching Nathan from behind, Michael shot him 5 times in the back. He quickly escaped in his car and drove away. After the crime, Michael and Shannon went to a hotel to create an alibi. Meanwhile, Jessica thoroughly cleaned their apartment to remove any incriminating evidence. The perpetrators then disposed of their clothes by burning them in a fireplace. Later, police officers arrived at the scene and were shocked by what they found. In a neighborhood considered one of the safest, Detective Todd Williams began investigating the crime scene. He found the garage door unlocked, with a strong smell of iron inside. Blood was splattered on the walls, car, and floor. Nathan's uniform, keys, and wallet were still intact, with no valuables missing. Given the lack of missing valuables, the police ruled out robbery as a motive for the murder. Detective Laurie Anderson spoke with Michelle, the victim's wife, after examining the scene. Michelle mentioned the family's financial struggles, sparking ideas for the police. They wondered if Nathan was hiding something, such as a gambling addiction or affair, which could have motivated the attack. The evidence suggested Nathan was deliberately targeted. The police examined the victim's cell phone and found only pictures of his wife and children, which led them to believe that Pete was a decent man. The investigation continued, and the next step was to canvass the neighborhood. As some neighbors reported seeing a car parked near the pet house, driven by a man wearing a brown sweatshirt, which quickly drove away after shots were fired. This gave detectives their first lead. Nathan's family was shocked to learn of his death and immediately flew to Guam to get answers. His mother, Carmelita Pett, was devastated and cried the whole way. When they arrived at the victim's home, Michelle, Nathan's wife, threw herself into her mother-in-law's arms and then lost consciousness. However, Nathan's mother sensed that her daughter-in-law's reaction seemed unnatural and possibly fake. The investigators decided to question Michelle again and asked her about the car witnesses had seen. Unexpectedly, she mentioned that her colleague, Michael Rodriguez, had a similar car. It's unclear why Michelle revealed this information, but it helped the police piece together the puzzle. It was later determined that Michelle had inadvertently revealed the truth, or perhaps the perpetrator's plan was flawed from the start. Detectives investigated Michael's identity and discovered he had a criminal record, which raised suspicions. They brought him in for questioning, and he responded calmly. According to Michael, on the day of Nathan's murder, he went shopping at a supermarket around 9 p.m. and met a woman named Shannon. They had a long conversation and decided to continue their acquaintance in a hotel room. Michael claimed they arrived at the hotel around 11 p.m. To verify Michael's alibi, the officers contacted Shannon, who confirmed their romantic encounter. However, the detective had doubts, so they decided to examine Michelle's phone records. Specialists recovered the correspondence between Michelle and Michael, which showed they had been communicating for a year. Their conversation on the day of Nathan's murder seemed suspicious, as they discussed a contract with someone named Van DJK in a cryptic manner, suggesting they might have been planning the crime. Michael was released for lack of evidence, but detectives re-questioned Michelle after analyzing her phone. She became agitated and hid something. As investigators pushed for more information, Michelle confessed to planning Nathan's murder with Michael, her lover, for insurance payouts. However, messages revealed her guilt, including a smile emoticon after Nathan's death. Meanwhile, Shannon told police that Michael's account of the attack was truthful. She admitted that she originally cooperated with him, but later surrendered to the police when she felt exploited and feared for her own safety. Hotel security footage supports her claim, revealing that Michael and Shannon arrived at the hotel at 11:40 p.m., which disputes Michael's initial statement that they arrived at 11 p.m. Detectives discovered Corey's involvement in the case after a key witness came forward. Although Corey had consistently denied any involvement, Jessica eventually revealed her role in the sinister plan. Michael Rodriguez, Corey Hawkins, Jessica Austin, and Michelle were arrested on December 8, 2010, and held without bail. Due to concerns about her mental health, Michelle was placed under surveillance to prevent a potential suicide attempt. In Clark County District Court on January 4, 2011, the 4 defendants were formally charged with conspiracy to commit murder and robbery with a firearm, as well as murder with a firearm. Michael and Corey faced additional charges of firearm possession. On September 21, 2015, Michael Rudolph Rodriguez was the first to go on trial for the murder of Nathan. To avoid the death penalty, he pleaded guilty. 1 week later, on September 29, 2015, Michael was sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole. His appeal was later denied. At the time of sentencing, Michael showed no emotion and did not express any regret for his crime. Michelle Pete went on trial in Las Vegas a month later, claiming a change of heart about killing her husband. She tearfully apologized to the victim's parents in court, saying she loved her husband and children and made a terrible mistake, before she fainting. The prosecutor argued that Michelle did not attempt to thwart the conspiracy, despite her claims to the contrary. The evidence presented in court supported this assertion. It was difficult for many to understand how a mother of 4 could become involved in such a heinous crime. The judge ultimately sided with the prosecution, concluding that Michelle was more involved in the crime than she had admitted. Michelle eventually pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit murder and first-degree murder with a firearm, which allowed her to avoid the death penalty. The Pete family also requested that the court not impose the death penalty on Michelle. Corey Alexis Hawkins also accepted a plea bargain to avoid the death penalty. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Jessica Austin also took a plea deal with prosecutors and was charged with conspiracy to commit murder. At her final sentencing in March 2016, Michelle again cited her unstable emotional state as a factor in her decision to commit the crime. The Pete family children will likely suffer lifelong trauma, making it hard to form strong bonds. The pain will haunt them, but justice has been served with the 4 responsible individuals facing consequences.